great Monday through Friday, and then the weekend.
So it was up to her to
solvers in the 21st century. This is October 11, 2012, and I am chairing the meeting tonight. Many of you have probably heard that Kathy Bach has had a tragedy in her family. Her house is burned down. She wasn't going to be at this meeting anyway. She was supposed to be on vacation. So unfortunately, she was called back from that vacation to face that tragedy. But I know that if she were here, she would just want to thank any of you out there that have sent well wishes and your thoughts and your prayers and your donations and all that. They really feel supported, and they're not alone, and that's really what matters. So that's where she is tonight, unfortunately, is taking care of that situation. And she's doing okay, and they're going to be fine with all the support that they're getting. And I'm going to go through what we're doing tonight, and then if Marcia wanted to say something about that, add to that, feel free. But we're going to start with the opportunity for the public to be heard. We have recognition of achievement next. Then we have our student presentation. We're going to review the minutes from September 5th, September 13th, and September 27th. Then we have the superintendent's report as well as gifts and donations. And then our special topics tonight, we have a presentation from the Student Advisory Committee. We have a presentation from our school committee representative from the Ashland Fields Management Group, and that's Mr. McGough. We have some policy updates, the advertising on school property, and the naming of school department facilities. We have a student travel request, and we're going to discuss the policy manual and discussion of action items and future agenda items. And hopefully we'll be adjourning at 9:30. So we're going to start with the opportunity for the public to be heard. So if anybody would like to say something at this point, please do.
This is my moment.
That's
I
your
do
moment.
want to share. Lori has expressed it very well. Kathy wants to be sure to thank the community for all of the outreach she and Wynn have received. She said they've come back to such a warm embrace to this community, and they have absolutely felt that and been supported by that. They are amazing people. I will tell you, I have never seen anyone take something like this with such good humor and strength. And honestly, she understands that, her family is safe, and that's what matters. So she's like really, she and Wynn are very clear on that. And it's sort of, to be in their presence when they're so aware of that in spite of this, they're very blessed, is like a real humbling lesson for those of us around them. I would also add that people are always saying, how can I help, how can I help? I would just suggest if you are interested in helping, Lori and I have both been sort of helping to coordinate some efforts, so you are certainly welcome to reach out to either of us. Suzanne Chapowski is also, she's in the phone book if you could spell her name, and or else you can go on a website called neighborbrigade.org. And there's some organizational stuff going on there. So I would recommend that you reach out to any of us if you're interested in helping Kathy and Wynn. And I just, on their behalf, I want to thank everybody.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hello, Mr. McGough.
Hi.
Welcome.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Fine.
I just wanted to give you the chance. If you wanted to do an update on the Eagle Scout project now would be a good time, if you have a minute, and then we'll get to your other portion later in the evening.
Okay, sure.
So why don't you fill us in on how that's going?
Yeah, I am associated with Troop 23.
Perhaps you can go towards the mic, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. I'm associated with Troop 23 in Ashland, and I have awareness of their Eagle Scout projects, and in particular how they are going at the middle school. So I think that the two boys that were doing their projects came before the school committee actually and talked to you, and actually three, and Craig Barrett as well. So Craig's finished. He's about ready to have his board review for the Eagle Scout presentation. He's completed it, so that's going to happen very, very soon. The work he did was at the high school, and really did a nice job up there. Isn't it amazing what these
Amazing.
guys can do?
Just amazing.
Yeah.
It is.
And I'll tell you, yeah, so and the other two projects that I know of going on right now, one has to do with my son, Michael, and another boy, Alex McMillan. Alex is working on refurbishing the stands at the middle school. I don't know if anyone's been out there, but that project, the scope of that project was to replace the, the warped boards, boards that were deemed kind of worn or unsafe or whatever. That was done with some good help from Kevin Johnson and that crew to do kind of more of the, delicate work there. And then the unskilled stuff was done by an army of Boy Scouts came in and scraped and then painted. The paint was donated by the Clocker Club. That effort's still ongoing. They painted all the bleachers, all the risers, a nice royal blue, and they painted the announcing booth. In addition, we had Vin Hanrahan come in and build steps that went up to the announcing booth so that you didn't have to make that huge leap from the last riser up into the booth. So that's much nicer now, too. They still have some work to do on that. I think it's just painting the metal at this point, and then Alex will be done with his project as well. My son is doing the combination bathroom and patio project. It doesn't sound great, but it's very functional. So he has so far taken this in phases. And again, I was starting to say this a little earlier, but now I think it sounds a little bit. The donations of goodwill, help, money, material by our town is very impressive. So we started out with a 6-inch sewer line that was run from the school all the way back to the concession stand. The work is being done on the concession stand and right around those grounds. So we ran 6-inch sewer line. That was done with the help of the New England Labor Union Training Center, i.e. Jamie Merloni. He had some very skilled people that operate excavators and technicians and so forth come in, donate their time and resources, the pipe, the stone, and then he had a bunch of kids. Then we had a bunch of scouts who they took the time to educate and teach. This is how you shoot a line, level, and all that kind of stuff. So it was fun. We have a lot of pictures from that phase of the project too. But very expensive, very expensive. They, guys that operate those, excavators and that was a week's worth of time being donated there. When that project was going on, Mike went down to pizza shop, Pizza Mine, thank you, Pizza Mine, and said, hey, I want to be able to feed these guys, which is a funny story. I want to be able to feed these guys. Could I, ask you for a donation of a few pizzas to help? And the guy said, whatever you need. And he said, can I ask you for 15 pizzas? He said, sure. So, I asked Jamie if he could, he could take care of the first day lunch and we can take care of the second day. So the first day he brings us back to the labor union where they had a turkey dinner with, and I have, next day we have to feed him pizza. But we went back down and said to the guy, can you mind, the foreman really likes pineapple. Can you put pineapple on the pizza? Anything you want on any pizza. So again, that whole spirit of community and giving is just very impressive. The next portion of that was the cement patio. I wish my son was there. It's like 20 by 20, something like that. It's a big patio off the side of the concession stand where they can use it to grill, the hot dogs and the hamburgers and whatever, and not stand in, mud. And we can put a couple of picnic tables there and people can, enjoy a snack while we're watching games and so forth. That was done again by the Jamie Merloni and Company. He donated the cement. Again, he taught a bunch of, the crushed stone and all that. Taught kids how to mix cement, how to, spread it out, and it looks fabulous. I mean, it really looks nice, so it dresses it up. The actual bathroom portion, he came and, again, poured a handicap accessible ramp. It's a very small rise, but a nice big ramp to, you know, make that turn, and it looks very professional. And then he cut the hole in the side of the wall. The blockhouse, if you draw a line right down the middle of it, you know, kind of the center of it, the front portion is the concession stand with the windows, and the back is where they put that, you know, the gator, that thing that, you know. And so we just took a portion of that in the back and, you know, are making that in a bathroom. Vin Hanrahan came down and he did all the framing. He framed out the roof, you know, the ceiling and the walls and so forth. And then Bernie Temple, who's also associated with Troop 23 in Ashland, is going to come down and rough in the electric. So, I mean, you know, it's all coming together, and so far it's been strictly donations. Now we're going to have to spend a little money. He's raised some money and spent a little money for things like fixtures and so forth, but a plumber is going to do the plumbing too. So, you know, and painting, and, you know, we're going to have to take that a little bit of a time. But that's the that's where it stands right now, and things are moving along, and I think it's a real good and positive thing for, you know, both our community, our schools, our fields, and the Boy Scouts. So everybody kind of wins in that.
Yeah, absolutely. We love those Eagle Scout projects.
Yeah, keep them coming.
They're
We're-
great,
yeah,
and
we're
really,
pumping
thank
them
you.
out, so.
Please thank the boys for us, as
Certainly,
well
yeah.
as all the people that are contributing. It's a good time
Yeah.
to be an Ashland citizen.
It really
right
is,
now.
isn't it? Yeah.
Everybody is just being very generous and open-hearted, and so please extend our thank yous.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Anybody else? So I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Plenty
Thank
for
you.
recognition of achievement.
That's great, thank you. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Durand, who's going to do the student recognition of achievement. And then I'm going to just preface a couple of things on our student presentation and turn it over to Dr. Stickney. So we'll start with you.
Thank you. I'd like to start by introducing the new recording secretary for the school committee. You may notice Amy Carmichael is not here. She has some family commitments that's not going to allow her to continue. So we're very lucky to have Nancy Day step in, and she will be the new recording secretary. So welcome, Nancy. I'd also like to announce that Robin Totenkopf, who has been a part-time school psychologist here at the middle school, has accepted the position of a full-time team chair. So we have filled all the team chair positions now, and we've posted for a part-time school psychologist, and we're very excited, and she's thrilled to be in that role, so we wish her luck. Would like to recognize some student volunteers from Ashland that worked in the special education summer camps this summer. They did a great job. They came in and just volunteered their time to help with all the kids, and that was Barry Blech, Tim Owen, Matt Henderson, and Libby Farrell. So we want to thank them for all their work this summer. And then I'd just like to tell you that due to our very successful filming here that took place here in August, we were approached by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt to see if they could film a couple of videos for marketing at the high school that would really like to use a couple of our classrooms. So we've been going back and forth with them, and they will be filming the next 2 Monday evenings at the high school. And they asked us if we had any students that would be willing to participate as extras sitting in the classroom. So next Monday evening, we have some students from Mendez that are going to be going up and participating in this filming. And that is Brian Gazzard, Lorna Syed, Anna Maria Theodoro, Jason Harrington, and Dilla Ozorzen. Hope I said that correctly. And then the following Monday, we have some middle school students that are going to go up and film a second video. And that's Ya Ansa, Adita Bangalore, Olivia White, Jillian Neal, Kate Toomey, Caleb Valetti, and Amy Palumbo. So these students are very excited. I also was told today that our principal, Jim Adams, will have a speaking part in one of the videos, which does not surprise me in the least. And we are also going to get some compensation for this in the form of Houghton bucks, which will allow Dr. Stickney to go through any item in their catalog and order it for our students in the school. And they will be making a donation, a cash donation to the Middle School Drama Club, because that's where the middle school students were chosen to do the filming, and also a donation to the Mendez schools so that the principal down there can have some money to spend on the students down at the school. So we're very excited about this.
Very good. Hollywood East.
Okay, and next we have our student presentation.
Thank you. And I'm going to introduce Dr. Stickney here, who will kind of give a broader overview than I will give right now. But I want to say a special thank you to the students, and I see Ms. Deneen here as well tonight, and to support them. I understand that the Rockets have been just really successful, and I'm really excited to hear how that's gone. So we're bringing them forward tonight to talk about their Rocket experience. So with that, Dr. Stickney, you can give some of the foundational pieces to the project and the tie-in with the donations.
Sure. At your last meeting, you had accepted the donation that was provided to us from a grant that brought us the Rockets. And this actually was an experience that we were able to tie in with the grant, so to speak, that the AEFI had given to Ashland Middle School to begin their STEM program in the STEM lab. So with that and the professional development that we attended this summer, we also have Mrs. Bennett and Mrs. Henry here with us this evening. We had attended a workshop this summer at the Museum of Science that assisted us in beginning the STEM programming at the middle school. And that's where the idea to launch the STEM program with the rocket launch began. So they actually brought it back to each grade level, and we were very excited about the way they were able to utilize their discovery block in the new schedule and having the STEM support here. So we thank our ladies, and I'm looking forward to this. I've seen the pictures, so this ought to be very exciting. But Mrs. Bennett was going to give us just a quick snapshot of how this came about also.
All right, thank you. First, let me just introduce the ladies here. We have Erica Doran, Caitlin Carson, and Haley Rao. And these are three of the students who, with the 8th grade, built their rockets, and they were our first group actually to put it all together and sort of our test, and went out in the backyard here and blasted off the rockets. And I think it was a great experience. And what was made it extra special, I think, is that when we were able, lots of times nowadays, it's difficult to spend the time and effort to process what we're learning in school. And what was so awesome is that Mrs. Henry brought them back in to the classrooms after the launching, and we had given them a little bit of training on using Google Apps. And what's Google Apps, sometimes people say, oh, that's our Gmail. Well, it's just so little is about being our email account. Google Apps allows us to collaborate from any place in the world that we have an internet connection. And so these kids, they all sat in the computer labs, and then they went home at night, and they were able to log on, and they were able to work collaboratively as they created a presentation. They were able to share pictures, chat on the side even, and say, oh yeah, I like this one, I don't like that one. And they just did a wonderful job. And they really had very little instruction in the lab. They really just ran with it because they are, and I don't want to overuse a term, but they're digital natives. And it's the way they're going to work all their lives. And for these kids to be doing it in 8th grade and moving on through high school and taking it with them, I think we're giving them such a toolkit to be successful that it's very exciting. So without further ado, ladies.
So during the process of assembling the rocket, we had some troubles, which included the blue motor mount, which we had to cut slits into, and the slits were like really hard to cut. And then there's also the straw that we had to attach to the rocket, and it was hard to, we had trouble like gluing it on because the glue took a while to dry. And also the parachute, because the strings were really hard to untangle, and it took us a while to figure it out. Throughout this rocket launch, we also learned about the engineering design process, and that includes like identifying the need or problem, researching the need or problem, developing solutions, and like selecting the best solution, and constructing a prototype, testing and evaluating the solutions, communicating the solutions, and redesigning. And so in the pink is the actual engineering design process, and in the green is what we did.
I did the launch, which had our successes and some of the problems we had. Some of the successes were the overall launch of the rocket. The rocket extended into the air and the parachute came out like planned. Also, some downfalls were that the parachute got twisted when it came out of the rocket. It didn't go straight up and down, it curved towards us and it kind of crashed into the fence. I also did the math, which you made a graph which showed all the data. And the vocabulary, there was vocabulary that you wrote the definition and then said how it was used in the rocket. For example, potential energy is energy the rocket was storing before the launch. And when the pressure was being pushed on the rocket before it was actually launched, that was the potential energy.
I did the universal systems model, which was basically like our goal to the end. So our goal was to launch our rocket. Then the input was that we had to get the kit and make sure we had all the materials, like glue, a ruler, and a craft knife. The process was we had to build the rocket by putting all the little pieces together. Our output was the finished rocket, and the feedback was we launched our rocket and the parachute deployed successfully. So our reflection was when we started making our rocket, everything went as planned. Our pieces were all there and we did everything like we were supposed to. The little straw was the only unexpected issue because it ended up falling off a few times. The only thing I would change and would be the glue because it didn't dry very quickly, but that's it. And that's it.
That's great. Does anybody have any questions for the students? How about right over at the microphone?
I guess I'd ask you, was there anything that surprised you about this project?
Well, it was actually, it was easier than it looked. We thought it was going to be a little more challenging, but it was quite easy.
And how would you compare the experience of building these rockets to if you had just kind of been in your classroom that day reading about building a rocket?
I think it was a lot better because you actually got to build the rocket and see it launch, so you got to see how like maybe your vocabulary was used on the rocket and examples.
Thank you.
You had a little graph there. What type of data did you collect?
Well, kids in the math class used this instrument, which I forget what it was called, but it measured how high the rocket went. And then so we just
put it into a
compared all
graph.
the data.
So were you doing this work when you said kids in your math class, and you were doing it through science and math and your STEM section, so the whole team was involved in making this project happen?
Yeah.
That's great. And was that different from last year or other years that you'd been in the school?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you girls enjoy that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. And everybody in the 8th grade did the same project?
Yeah.
And did you see some rockets went off and some didn't?
Yeah.
That was my error usually when they didn't go off, because I hadn't done something correctly.
Yeah. Well,
If I can just make a quick comment or two, I've seen some videos as well of your rockets we've been privy to, and we've loved that, and that's been so fun. And I want to thank your teachers for the passion that you have brought to this program. It's been a lot of work to get it going, and I just really appreciate what you've done for our kids. So students, you've done amazing work, and to the teachers for all of your organization and all of your support, thank you so much. It was something brand new for us, and you've done a great job with it. So students, thank you so much.
Thanks for coming in.
thanks for coming in,
It was
girls.
wonderful to
You did a great
watch.
job tonight, too.
Okay, next we're moving on to our review of minutes. So we've got the September 5th, 2012 regular session minutes. Does anybody have anything there?
I move to accept as presented.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the minutes have been accepted. Okay, now we have the September 13th. No, we don't.
I don't see
Okay.
it here.
Okay, I'm sorry, I had it on my agenda, so that those are the only ones we have in our packet.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right, so we're moving on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick things. If you didn't take in the Touch a Truck event, you missed a wonderful, wonderful time. Sirens blaring, lights going, the wonderful smell of the Lions food cooking. It was just amazing. To everyone who had anything to do with the Touch a Truck event, oh my gosh, thank you so much to our community. And it was just so interesting. The police were there, they had a wonderful setup. Of course, the firemen were there, they had a wonderful setup. Some of the interesting vehicles that were there it was just fun. It was just such a fun time. I personally had a blast. It was great.
Did they let you touch any trucks?
Of course I did. Absolutely. It was a lot of fun. And just to watch the children, because their eyes were just so big. It was just, watching the children for me was every bit as much fun as the trucks. Anyway, thanks to our community members, the service organizations who helped out, the Lions, the parade of volunteers. It was just fantastic. And I believe they brought in around $1,400 on that. So it was also very successful as a fundraiser. Our athletes, is completely switching gears. I have about 7 items here. Our athletes continue to perform well. The golfers continue to compete well with strong competition. Our soccer, field hockey, volleyball teams continue to be extremely busy, experiencing both wins and losses. But according to Mr. Quigley, they continue to display strength in their endurance, and many are putting forth just really outstanding performances. So thanks to our volunteers, or to the athletes, and to the parents, of course. Football's at home tomorrow night, I believe. I'm not sure if you're going to all report on that, but I believe this is homecoming, is it not, this weekend? So we're hoping that everyone can come out to that. In cheering, recently hosted a Little Clocker Cheer Clinic, which proved to be very, very successful. The educator evaluation continues to be at the forefront of a lot of our work. We continue to roll that out. Dr. Stickney continues to stay on top of that. Our schools continue to professionally develop their staff as the new modules roll out. So that's, of course, on a continuum. Our SAC met, the Superintendent's Advisory Council met yesterday, and we placed a focus on PBIS and how that's working on a district-wide scale. It was a wonderful opportunity. I thought it was very, very successful. And then, of course, we met again this morning in a smaller, more intimate group, and we're looking at probably sometime in January is what our hope is, to roll something out to the community and have a community evening where we take a look at the PBIS and how it's working within our school district. Next item that I've got here was just to let our school committee members know that I've attended the first Tri-County Superintendent's Roundtable with Ms. Duran the other day. Very, very informative. It was an excellent time. I'm really, really glad that we went. I continue to meet around with other area superintendents. I've been in Hopkinton, Medway. We both went to Keefe Tech the other day. I had an excellent tour and of course a wonderful meal with Superintendent Lynch there. So we're quite busy right now as we go around and spend time with our neighbors, but it's time very, very well spent. And the last item that I've got was just thanks to everyone for either presenting or attending our open houses and our curriculum evenings. Really, really well-attended events, and nothing but incredibly positive feedback. So thanks to everyone who had a part in that. And that's my report this evening.
Okay, thank you. And moving on to gifts and donations with
Yes.
with you, Assistant Superintendent Duran.
I do have 3 of them this evening, I think, 3. From the recycling company at the Warren School, we have $16.40. We have a donation from EMC, who gave us 15 gently used laptops for the middle school STEM lab, and that has a value of about $4,500. And I have a note here, was with assistance from Dr. Leslie Marcy and the AEFI, so I think they played a part in getting those for us. And then I guess Target has a Facebook page, And people in the community could go on their webpage and like the Warren School. And because so many of our community members did that, we have a check for $100 from Target that will be used by the Warren School. So thank you, whoever you were, that went out and liked Warren School on Facebook.
Can you still do that, do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna find out.
I like the Warren School.
Yes, we are Warren School. Okay, and then,
So I
That's
need a
it?
motion.
oh, can I have a motion to accept the gifts and donations?
So moved.
And I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you.
gifts and donations approved. Okay, moving on to special topics. First, we have a presentation by our Student Advisory Committee. Welcome. You see some new faces this year. It's right there. Yes. Hello, everybody. Do you all want to introduce yourselves? We know you, Ankit, but you can start.
Sure. My name's Ankit Kumar, and I'm a student who's here every meeting.
I'm Emily Starrett. I'm a senior.
I'm Bailey Wilkinson. I'm also a senior.
I'm Helen Sargis. I'm a sophomore.
I'm Anna Weisgerman. I'm also a sophomore.
Welcome.
So to start, at the beginning of the year, we had senior convocation and the senior barbecue, which was really exciting for us to start off our senior year, our last year. So that was really exciting. And then also on the same day as convocation, we had a core values scavenger hunt, which was we had to all run around the school and find different core values and ask teachers questions and rack up points. And then the winning team got a marathon lunch. So that was really fun. And also the National Honor Society letters came out to the juniors and seniors who qualified.
I just wanted to say something about the scavenger hunt. It was really cool because there were members of every class in like small groups, and it was a really good way to integrate people from different grades. And I don't know if this was just a coincidence, but people that were from different like groups of friends, and I don't know, it was just a good way to collaborate with people of different ages and groups. So, like, I know I met people that I wouldn't have met otherwise probably, and, like, I see them in the hallway now, like, hey, you know. So that was good. I like that we, you know, it was good, something new we haven't done. I thought it was really cool. Side note, so.
That's great. Yeah.
The freshman class have been participating in the Navient seminars, where they go and they learn how to use that, and it's really interesting. I still log on, and I like it a lot. The Theatrical Society has been doing rehearsals for their play Arsenic and Old Lace, and it's showing on the first weekend in November. And fall sports are doing really well. The boys soccer are doing well. Football and girls soccer have both won 3 games. Golf, cross country, they're all great.
Thank you.
Progress reports came out last Friday, so the kids got to see how they were doing. And yearbook is starting up collecting senior pictures and biographies for the yearbook that will be printed soon. And then picture day was last week for all the other students, so Grin and Barrett came in and had all our pictures taken.
So last Saturday, as I brought up before, there was a car show at the high school, and we were actually able to get 43 cars to show up and register. So it's a pretty successful event, and I'm sure JSA will be planning to do it next year as well, if we can get a similar turnout. And it already has been brought up, but every year JSA does a fundraiser at Fireflies, where if you bring a flyer, you get 10% of the revenue. And this year, the organization decided to donate all the proceeds to the Bach family. And obviously, all our thoughts go out to them. Let's finish off.
So this week is Spirit Week. That's always fun. We had Pajama Day, Ninja Day, Twin Day was actually today, and then Class Color Days tomorrow. We're going to have a pep rally, the homecoming rally, and kind of the driving force is every time you
every individual that shows like spirit, they get like a ticket that goes towards their class bank, not literal, but their tickets. And whoever has the most tickets, they're gonna get a barbecue for their class. So that's kind of, there's some like competition going on. So the homecoming rally is tomorrow, and there's a big homecoming football game tomorrow, and then of course the dance on Saturday. So I know that's the big one that everyone goes to, so.
And one more thing, I just remembered, this year the newspaper at the high school, one of the things that they'll be trying to do is if the art department or the English department or basically anyone sees exemplary student work, we'll be looking to publish that. And then when we distribute it, everyone in the school will be able to see it. So our first issue is going out next week, hopefully.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
Good idea. Wonderful.
I think that's all
Yep.
we've got.
Thank you very much. It sounds like
Thank
you're off to a
you.
great start.
Can I ask a question
Oh,
before you
any
guys
questions?
run?
Sorry.
No, Emily, I love what you said about the scavenger hunt and integrating. What a great idea, right?
I
Because in
liked it.
high school, the
Yeah.
idea of mixing kids up.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm just kind of wondering whether there's more planned like that, or whether you guys think it would be a good idea. You know, what's the thought on that? It seems so smart.
I'm sure we'd all love to do it again,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
I feel
planned.
it's good on paper, and it was definitely successful. Then it's just, I'm sure it's so hard
It's
for
a big project.
all the
I
teachers.
guess I don't necessarily
and-
mean another scavenger hunt, but other
Yeah.
ideas, like when you do something
Yeah.
that you could mix up groups,
In
right?
the past, last year,
Yeah.
there was we
We did skits last
Yeah.
year to
Yeah.
there's different groups that had different core values. You had to put on a skit with your group, and they were all same thing, different grades and different friend groups all mixed together. And you had to put on a skit, and then you voted, I think, and then the winning skit like performed for everyone. Was that how it worked or something?
Yeah,
I
either
don't
way,
remember.
either
Mixing it up.
But
Yeah.
it sounds like what you're
Yeah.
saying is that everybody's really enjoying the opportunity to connect
Right.
with other
Yeah.
people. And these activities make it a little easier
Yeah.
Yeah.
to meet people that you
Yeah.
wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it doesn't even have to be a huge major
Yeah.
project.
No, that's what I
just-
mean. It's just with
Yeah.
that
I-
kind of, that
yeah.
mindset
I liked it.
is so
yeah,
nice.
It was early on too. I mean, even earlier would have been better maybe, because it's good to, I was afraid of the seniors when I was a freshman, so it's good to have that integration, I think.
And you guys aren't quite that scary, right?
No.
Not
Look,
really.
actually, I was there. Mrs. Bach and I both showed up too early for convocation. We got the time mixed up, but we were there. We were flies on the wall while you guys were running all. I mean, it did look like so much fun.
Yeah. Everyone was
Everybody
dripping
had a
in
huge
sweat,
smile on
and
their face.
everyone getting really into it.
It's just, yeah. And I have 2 kids in that school, and I saw them both with other kids, and I'm thinking, how do they know that person? And everybody looked happy. So, it's nice that you got to do that, and go back and advocate for more activities like that. It's great. People just love spending time with other people and getting to know people. So go for it. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
Thanks for coming.
You did
guys.
great. Thank
We'll
you
see you
so
again soon.
much.
Okay. Next is Mr. McGough, who's here from the Ashland Fields Management Group. You're one of the school committee's appointees to that group, and we've asked you to come in and just fill us in on how that's going.
I am one of 2 people appointed by the school committee. Renee, I think, should be here.
He couldn't be here tonight.
Can you pass these down? So, we are having, we as in our group are having kind of an official presentation next week with the hope of reaching out to some of the field user groups. And we've prepared a very in-depth, deep dive presentation on all things fields for those of us that like grass and fertilizer and whatnot. So
Lawnmowers, sprinklers.
I would encourage anyone that wanted any more information or any official, word on things to attend that. I will not be there. I'm going to be in the UK, so I can't make that meeting, but it's going to be very informative. So I took some slides from our group presentation, and these slides are based on our presentation. Some are directly lifted out of that presentation, and others I kind of tried to aggregate some of the information up to an appropriate level. So feel free to, ask questions and stop in the middle, but these are my thoughts and my understandings, and I'm certainly far from perfect, so I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone. This is just, my understanding out of being several months into a small group. I'm sure everyone here knows the good work done by the Fields Committee, not to be confused with our management group. But I think it's worth just a couple of seconds going over it to put the management group into, give it a little context. You literally can't go anywhere in town without hearing about the high school project and when it's coming online, so I'm sure everyone's aware of that. And I will tell you, just as a, regular person, I hope, I've been there and I've looked at it. If you haven't had a chance to go take a look at it, do so. My kids all play every sport, hockey and, field and this and that. I've been in every place from Boston to Springfield, and I honestly can tell you I have not been as impressed as I am with the result of this effort. This is truly something, this is a showpiece for our town and our community here. Our kids are really fortunate to have some place like this to be able to play. It's truly amazing. So I wish I was back in high school where I can go out and play on those games. So that's kind of where the plan ended up. But it's my understanding that it kind of happened. It was people took an interest in the fact that we didn't have adequate fields, and the fields that we had were not up to the best conditions. So a group was formed that went out and did something about it. The Fields Committee. And the approach was to, create a plan, do an analysis and get that and go forth with a plan. The analysis produced, the findings there were, hey, your fields are in very poor condition due to overuse. Okay, so what are we going to do about that? I think the outcome or the plan there was to implement a phased approach at building or bringing some more space online. We see out here this replacement for Walker Field, the turf field, which is, again, amazing, very impressive. That was kind of a stopgap. And then we have the high school coming online. Both of those, so that effort, that's the culmination of the efforts here. But there's some understanding and byproducts of that, such as now you have field space. It needs to be managed in that the field has to be cared for and set up to a certain standard and held to a certain standard. And as a town, we would like to avoid incurring any additional costs in maintaining said new fields. So, those are the kind of the requirements, and out of that drove the creation of our group. So we're kind of a management oversight group. So if you look at the next page, our group is made up of 5 full-time volunteers. Nick Moscratolo is our chairman. He is affiliated with Ashland Youth Baseball and softball. Sorry, I believe he was just elected president. So yeah, congratulations there. Renee, our other person from the school committee, is our secretary, and he is also involved with AYB, and I believe he coaches T-ball. So, and then Rich Powell, he's a member of the American Legion and kind of represents the adult baseball there. And Jim Duane, who is employed by Framingham in the Park and Recs division. So he does this for a living, growing grass and charging fees. So we turn our heads a lot and look at Jim. So. And then, of course, myself, and my affiliations are with Pop Warner Football and Ashland Youth Lacrosse. In addition to that, we have some good people that are coming down and donating their time, one of which is Kevin Johnson, who, obviously everyone knows Kevin. Ryan Quigley, our athletic director. DPW was Doug Small, but he's moved on, and I think there's a new person that's already taken over, and we look forward to having him, or I think it's a him, come down and join our meetings, along with someone from the Selectmen and Finance Committee. So what are we responsible for? That's a list of fields. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but you can feel free to look at this tonight before bed. And, you know, these are, I don't know how many fields we have here, but one thing to note on this slide is the high school fields are in here, and you can see those are actually not online yet. My understanding is that the multi-purpose turf field will come online in time for the the Thanksgiving Day game. So that'll be pretty exciting. First game up there. But the rest of the rest is natural grass, and that takes time to grow. I'm not, I can't say when that will be ready, but the contractors are on that, and they're, I'm sure, managing that process and turning it over to us at some point. So again, I think I just said it earlier, but our responsibilities are ensure that our fields are maintained and that we raise funds. We took a bit of a methodical approach to this, created a maintenance plan. This was created, I came in to look at it. It was, it's a spreadsheet that says fields should be mowed every couple of weeks, 26 times a season, fertilizer should be applied 7 times, things like that. Fall cleanup and a spring cleanup should be performed, all that kind of thing, in order for it to, the grass to survive and thrive. Right now that's being accomplished by the folks from the DPW and, Kevin's staff as well. We'll bring that to bear. And along with that, we do employ some private contractors. I can kind of talk about that in a minute, but in addition to the maintenance, we raise funds. And those funds are mainly raised through our field fees. That's, raising funds. So we charge organizations that want to use the fields, a fee to conduct their sport there. The organization reserves field space, and we just kind of manage that allocation. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a second. The fee structure is, I think, another byproduct of some of the work that was done by the Fields Committee, and probably some surveying of surrounding towns to come up with a chart of how much should we charge, what's an appropriate amount to cover costs and not destroy organizations here. And I think if you look at this, it's around $40 an hour to use a regular grass field. But there is the concept of a multiplier below, and you see categories of different sports. Some are deemed more heavy use than others, so a greater multiplier is applied, and some a little less. Like baseball is a little bit less, I guess, destructive to the grass, hard on the grass. So the reservation process right now. A website has been set up, and that's the website we have, and it's actually, it's a nice site, and you can take a look at it if you're interested to see some more things about the fields. And one of the highlights there is the calendar. The calendar, I know I use, I'm also involved with the Cub Scouts. My son, little guy, is a Cub Scout, so I use Kevin Johnson's calendar to look on, for all of the available rooms and space and stuff. And then when he's done planning for school, I look for an available room so that we can have our Cub Scout meeting. So similar process. We hope that organizations will go on, take a look at the space being utilized, and then, we've been around since April, I think. So, it's not, I can't speak from a ton of processes here, but the idea is to send an email message to the link here and say, I'm so-and-so from such and such organization. We would like to have our games on the turf field on such and such days. Thank you for your consideration. Then follow that up with a written request. There's an application process and the appropriate documentation submitted. We then review that at our next meeting, unless there's some sort of an emergency, which there hasn't been yet. But, and we as kind of informed people that are a little bit, we're current on the needs of a lot of different organizations will vote on that permit or the so-called permit, but whatever it is, the reservation on the field. And what I mean by that is that there's a prioritization you'll see on the next page. So if lacrosse season ends or football season ends today and say, guess what, I'm going to be the first guy in to get it next year, you can't because the school hasn't put their reservation in yet, and they're first on our prioritization list. We want to make sure that all school sports are served first and town events, and then we'll start. So there's a little bit of a balancing act there. So the voting takes place, and then after the vote, we approve the reservation, and the calendar is updated to reflect that being a permanent reservation, and it's on the calendar. And by the way, I noted on the bottom here, my understanding of the billing process is that during a billing cycle, the town is responsible for that. They will scrape the screen kind of for all the different organizations and the dates that they used those resources, and then generate the bills and facilitate the collection of money and allocation into the correct accounts. So, and we get a statement, and that's something that we may consider if, you know, we're voting and, you know, someone is delinquent or something, we might, you know, take that into consideration, although, again, that hasn't happened. On the next slide, you see the actual prioritization, but basically, as I said, it's the school first and then youth sports following it up pretty quickly. Some of the accomplishments, I actually went over the Eagle stuff and when I was up here first, so I'll skip that, but I just, you know, just please, I'd like to make sure that we acknowledge the extreme generosity of the labor union, the training center, Vin, Hanrahan, the Clocker Club, and on the middle school improvements. Now, I forgot to preface this by saying, there are a lot of fields, as you saw, and the idea was to kind of have people that are involved with certain fields anyway kind of look after those fields. That's the informal kind of agreement that we have. So we have someone dedicated. Rich Powell is actually the person that's dedicated for middle school, but I mean, you know, my son's doing a Boy Scout project here, the varsity high school football plays here, our football team practices here. I'm just here a lot, so I see things that are going on, so that's where I can give you some firsthand updates. But so on this page, these are the middle school accomplishments, if you will, as reported by individuals. But, you know, basically, you can see here that there was a lot of cleanup going on in the fields. As far as actual maintenance of the, you know, grass in the fields, not quite, you know, we're not quite there yet. But in the meantime, some of the things like removing debris via the students during Community Service Day. They came down and got service hours. There was trash removed by DPW, bricks and things of that nature. A lot of cleanup done. A lot of work done to the infrastructure here. I know that we put on some yellow, you know, cap dressing for the fence, baseball fences, the black mesh to dress that up. I think there were some donations made to build a bullpen for the softball there, and so on. So a lot of different things going on here. So they aren't just limited to maintaining the grass. And the next page are the additional, you know, the additional locations where we had some work going on, and you can kind of take a look at those. And definitely down at the bottom of the page here, another very generous donation was at the Warren School. I don't know, you know, in back there you see the softball and baseball, I think, field, the ball fields back there. The road that runs along there, that was repaved by Richard Goldman, so another huge donation. Very impressive. So, okay, so those are the things that we're responsible for. Those are some of the activities that we've been involved with. But let's get down to the, you know, actual, you know, one of the points that we're charged with, and that's field rental, the money. The annual maintenance cost has been estimated. You know, I talked about that chart. How many lawn mowings, how many fertilizer applications, how many whatevers. That matrix has been applied to each one of the fields, and a figure of $207,000 to maintain these fields has been established. In addition to that, we should be saving $45,000 a year to replace the turf when that lifetime expires in like 12 or 15 years. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but that's been, you know, kind of amortized, and that's the number. So $207,000, of course, we're not expected to raise that in fees, though that includes services from the DPW. We'll fill some of that, also from, again, from the schools. And then private contractors. And those private contractors will have to be paid, and that's where the money is going to, the fees that we charge are going to, we've calculated to close that gap. That's the plan, and that's what we want to execute. So, that's how we're gonna do that, and it's going to be up to us to manage the application of resources. So, I'll tell you what I'm kind of stumbling about here in a second. But like manage the DPW cutting this field and that field, and then we'll take care of that field. One of the things that shows some promise is the idea of adopting a field. So if we have 10 fields or something like that, an example would be, take for example Grinsell. That's town property, but it's completely maintained by AYB, Ashland Youth Baseball. So we don't pay a thing to maintain that. They maintain it. They hire their own contractors through their own, whether they be donations or their fee structure or whatever it is. Another example that seems to be working out fairly well is the Ashland Youth Soccer has taken over the fields that are behind the rec center. So those two fields back there were actually too short, just a touch too short for football and soccer, too narrow for soccer. So, I'm sorry, too narrow for I don't know something else, but lacrosse, but work out nicely for soccer. So they have decided to adopt those fields. So those two fields kind of come off of our books. We subtract that out of the money that we need to, and therefore we free up some additional resources that we have committed now. So that's one way. Another way of kind of filling that need, which I think is pretty innovative. And I can tell you for Ashland, for football, we're looking at that model as well. We may, we'll have to, run the numbers and so forth, but it may be to our advantage. Our program is not, extremely, lucrative. So we find it challenging with fees and so forth outside of keeping the equipment certified. But we do have, alumni that are local that could come back and help and donate a couple of mowings, that kind of thing, or fertilizer treatment, that kind of thing. So that's a model that we're taking a look at. The next slide, again, I lifted this right from the presentation. We're looking at what this kind of, I think, is saying is that we have some priorities here, and I think this is generated from a very large spreadsheet of, items that were identified as, potential work. And there has been an attempt made to classify those into kind of must-have, nice-to-have, and, we can kind of wait on that. So some of this, again, so you look under primary and you see sprinklers and land work. Well, those are probably going to be fairly critical pieces. I was over at one field and there was a huge divot in it, and that type of work has to be done right away. Somebody could twist an ankle and get hurt. So, so that's that. This is kind of some outlays that we have. I think these are things that are in process, and we're going to vote on those type of cash outlays because we have to be careful, I think. Which brings us to the last slide and what's next. So, we have some things that we want to accomplish and want to focus on. So you can read these for yourself. But the two that I've highlighted on that, again, throughout this discussion, I think you may have been picked up on the theme that I'm concerned about raising money and maintaining the field standards. The rest of that is kind of, is nice to have in my world. So I think we have to get kind of innovative about streaming, creating demand here for outside of the town interests. So for example, we had, you know, we had some information about a semi-professional team, perhaps using, you know, like our turf, if we can, you know, that would be, turf is turf. It's not going to, you know, wear out like a regular, you know, dirt field is, so that's something that we can generate some, you know, premium prices on. So that's one aspect. And the other is to refine that permitting process. I think it's important for us to be perceived as a help, as a resource, rather than, you know, an impediment. We're going to be dealing with folks from the town or from outside that don't just have, you know, a child to take care of or coach a team of kids. We're talking about people that have stepped up to the organizational level, that serve on a committee and dedicate a significant amount of their time to bettering their group. So the last thing they need is a roadblock from our group, you know, some sort of speed bump to slow them down. So again, next week we're going to have this, on Monday we'll have our presentation, and that's an attempt to reach out to these users. And, you know, I'd like to see the permitting process a little more smooth, and I think we have to be careful and make a very conscious effort to be, to create a good field user community where we have good citizens that pay on time, that are respectful of the fields, and that, you know, resolve conflict internally rather than, you know, and that way it's self-policing. If one citizen is not, you know, necessarily following the rules, then perhaps the rest of the community is aware of that, and that kind of helps its own self along, kind of like saying, gee, you didn't vote, you know, kind of thing. So I'm hoping that's where we get. Where I'd like to stay away from is, you know, kind of heavy-handed, you know, we're going to revoke your permit if you don't type of thing, because at the end of the day, I mean, we're a group that's trying to serve a purpose here. We're trying to fill a need, and we're one solution to, again, filling that those two requirements, and hopefully we'll be effective. So I think that's all I've got. If anyone has any questions.
That was very comprehensive. A nice background to understanding.
Very comprehensive.
No,
That's very polite of you.
No,
Thank you, Mrs. Toss.
I appreciate it, actually,
Yeah,
and
okay.
that way we can start asking you some questions. So,
Sure.
who wants to go first?
I
Anybody?
have some questions. So, I just have a whole lot of ones that came to me, so, and they don't have to be, these, we can run through
Sure.
this quickly, but I guess I'm curious, and maybe it's too early, you know, this whole thing was predicated on the idea that there was all this demand, you know, this
Yeah.
unmet demand, and I'm wondering what your experience is. Is it too soon to tell? Are we going to be able to, you know, generate the kind of revenue we were hoping for?
Yeah, and this is, again, Dave McGough answering you, not an official, you know, position from our committee. My, you know, limited informed knowledge says, yeah, I think we are going to meet that, and there certainly is a demand. I mean, there is right now an overuse. There continues to be an overuse on these fields. We are, you know, we are doing damage to fields where we wouldn't have to if we had these other new fields online. Once those come online, because it's not just, you know, this time, well, from 10 to 12, you can have it, and 12 to 5. You need time to literally have these things rest. I mean, you know, we've all been out in the backyard and had a, you know, get-together, and then to see your lawn trampled to death, you need to stay off it for a while and let that kind of regrow. That's certainly going to give us an excess surplus. We're going to have some unused fields, but that's the plan. We're going to have some fields that are off limits for a while, and we're going to, you know, kind of rotate that around. A good example is Stone Park. That was rested for a couple of growing seasons, and that came back very nicely. And, you know, that's the kind of fields I think we want to present to our user community and to the folks that we're inviting into our town as, you know, for competition and tournaments and so forth. So, yes, I do think that the demand is there.
So, and we haven't got the new fields on, so have you noticed that, have you had, I guess I'm sort of, a lot of my questions are around sort of some of the things you may have heard, that we spent a little bit of time on that policy, trying to anticipate all the
Yeah.
possible things.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'm curious just to hear
Sure.
how that's working out and whether you've, you know, and actually, you may have answered this question. So one of the things you said, oh, no, actually, it's a little different. So let me just go back to the Grinsell adopt a field.
Sure.
So then my understanding is they've adopted the field. They're not on that fee structure. They're
No,
not
that's
paying the
correct.
fees. They're just taking care of it.
That's correct. Yep.
And then you mentioned that someone had donated a softball bullpen. Was that here at the middle school?
Yes, it was. I believe that's the Clocker Club that paid for that.
Oh, it was the
Yeah.
Clocker Club.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Okay,
Yeah.
so that was gonna be my question. I know that we've had sort of this community of people who step up and do
Yep.
things, and we've talked about it a lot tonight.
Yep.
And I guess my question is, I'm wondering, and it's kind of
Sure.
just putting it out on the table, whether we'll see that kind of stuff dry up in the face of our fee structure, and whether that's a concern. You know, like, are we?
I mean, and then it's a very good question. I think you raise a very good point there. Yet another point, yet another reason to make friends of our field users. If the organization is happy, and I'll speak for one of the board members of Ashland football. If we get a field to play on that's thick and that's not muddy after a rain, we have, and I might be a little bit biased being a field guy too, so,
Yeah.
but like when we have rain, sprinkles outside, I cancel practice because I don't want to tear up the lawn. I'm considerate of that. When I think we have to make friends of our field users. Our organization is happy, they don't mind, I mean, as long as it's not bankrupting them and preventing them from, doing other things that they would do with this money that are, critical to their existence, I think that that's an outlay, it's an investment that they'll see some return on. And as long as we keep it a positive experience, then I don't think that other folks are going to, look unkindly on us, and they'd be much more willing to come up and donate these services and work with, offer their talents and resources to us. So, yeah, very good point.
So I have one last question.
Sure, please.
It started by a thank you to all of, I see a couple of your members here and yourself. I want to thank you all for the time you're putting in. So my question is this manageable for your committee? Like, how is that working out in terms of sort of keeping this running? I mean, is it turned to be manageable in terms of dealing with the permitting and all of that so far?
I think a couple of different thoughts on that. I think that, one, full disclosure, I would say I certainly do the least in the group. There are some fellows sitting over there that do a lot of work, and, I'll give you an example. A note just went around. These guys went down and spent a Saturday putting a, cap on a fence. So, we bought the cap, but they put it on, and the mesh and string it up. So I can't be involved at that level. So I may not be quite as effective in that capacity. But so I think, though, that we have a pretty, a good set of people that are truly interested in bettering the facilities in general. I don't think anyone can question that at all. I think every member is interested in coming out of this with better facilities and, a more attractive place for us all to conduct youth sports. I think our committee is certainly filled with strong opinion folks, and sometimes that's challenging, and other times, but those, in my opinion, those are the types of personalities that tend to get things done. They go out there and make things happen, but it's not always the rough or easiest of roads to.
We have no
travel
idea
down.
what you're talking about.
I know. I'm sure you don't, but there are strengths and weaknesses, and I think they complement and balance each other out. So.
Well, this has been very informative for me. I mean, thank you
No,
so
I
much.
appreciate
Yeah, and,
it. Does anyone else have any other questions? I mean, my question was Superintendent Clenchey?
I have just a couple of key
Sure.
points that I'd like to make too. Mr. And I were invited and attended a very well-attended seniors breakfast the other morning. And what do you think a couple of questions were about the fields?
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought, isn't it interesting that, that the room was just chock full of wonderful senior citizens, very invested in the community. And two of the questions that came up were right about our fields, and,
Well-
you know, I just thought it was amazing. And I think so that's the first point I wanted to make. The second thing that you had alluded to earlier, as you were talking about the Eagle Scouts and such, but it strikes me as you're talking about it now, and I said this in our SAC committee this morning, and Dr. Stickney and I are trying to figure out, I think there were probably about 30 to 40 people easily in that SAC room at the town hall, and I was explaining to them, or expressing, I guess, both, as I'm trying to explain to people outside of Ashland, the level of volunteerism that is in this community, and you look at Kathy's situation, you look at all of it's amazing. You can't even describe it. And I agree with what you're saying earlier, and when you take a look at the work that that your groups have done, oh my gosh, I mean, it just, for somebody who oversees the education, the instructional delivery and such, and you just look and say, what an incredible community, I'm so gifted to be here, you know, because you give so much back, and this is just another one of those things, and I think I'm gonna agree, you're not really gonna say this, but I'm gonna say, when you have movers and shakers, that is, I mean, that's just when stuff happens. And so I always think that when you have a group that maybe comes from different ends of different levels of experience, and that's a positive, and we all benefit. So I'm just gonna reaffirm what you're hearing here. We are so grateful to you, and we thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
the work that you do and the gifts that you bring to our children. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. I don't
Okay.
have anything else.
That's it.
Everybody-
Well, if you ever want to talk turf, just have me back. Thank you for the
Thank you
opportunity.
very much, Mr. McGaugh. Okay, we're moving on to our policy updates.
Thanks, Phil. Oh, that might be
Mr. Jewett, is that you?
Yes. Just awestruck by that presentation. I'm getting my breath.
Yeah. It really is amazing.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, I didn't want to, silly antenna, but I think to your point about fees and volunteers, it's two different groups. So, you know, the youth sports, the adult sports, all these different groups, they're paying fees to play, and those fees are generated from what they charge the kids to play. The folks that are doing the work are other groups. So you got the Hands, the Clocker Club folks, all these other folks that are invested in the community and want to see these structures improved for cross-community use. They're doing that work. I mean, they've got some specialty things going on, like, you know, baseball has basically adopted Grinsell Field for the last 5 or 6 years, so they do everything. That's their arrangement. And they sort of self-manage the finances within their own fees.
Thank you.
But, you know, we've got folks lining up to help us out up at the high school, to finish the concession stand, to do other things. So, I mean, to your point, I mean, and even with Kathy, I mean, this is a great town. It's a great town,
It
people
is.
care about the
Feeling pretty
town.
warmly about
You
this
know,
town.
I don't care what you read in the newspaper, what you hear at the street corner. At the end of the day, it's a great town to live in, and there's a lot of good people doing a lot of good things to keep it that way.
And it's all about communicating the need. You
Well,
know,
that helps too.
once you do that effectively and people know there's a need, they step up.
Yeah, what they do.
But it also moves the community forward.
It does.
Yeah.
And that's such a strength for this community. Not all communities are like this. It's an incredible community.
All right, so with that said, I'm gonna just flip these. It says we're gonna do 5, 6, and then 3, 3, but 5, 6 is the, I'm sorry, 3, 3 is the easiest one, right?
That's what I was gonna say, I wanted
Yeah,
to
let me
say.
see. No, well, it says 5, 6 here, so let's do 3, 3 first, because basically, this is just a minor change that we talked about at our last meeting. All the changes that everyone sent in are here. If there are some questions, I would ask if there are some questions.
Well, I found one little thing, and I think it was to Kathy Bates's point the last time. when we were going through the A, B, C, D, E, and the tone was what we were going to do versus what we were not going to do.
Yeah.
And on K,
Okay.
that needs, the language needs to be changed a little bit if we're going to follow along with that concept.
I believe I fixed that.
I think that was the only one that I noticed. Everything else looked fine. But you know where it says, like, advertisements, J would be a positive statement, and then K goes to no display materials are to be displayed.
Well, these are all things that can't be done, so,
So I was just talking about the language to Kathy's point. It does, I don't think it changes the point of what you're trying to say. It just,
right, but I thought, I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
I thought we corrected those. So I'm looking at my master here. I mean, if there's, if you have some issue with the
I-
English in K, just make
Yeah,
a
no, I
suggestion,
was-
we can mark it up. But I believe we changed the whole flow of
Yeah,
three
it's-
and relettered and renumbered the policy so it would flow to
Yes.
Kathy's point last time.
So I think your point is that you don't need to put the first part.
No.
Are to be displayed, so.
Material, how about, wouldn't it just be
Materials
materials
that
that
show.
show? That's all you keep.
Right.
Materials that show disrespect,
take-
and the rest of it.
Materials.
it was just a language thing to have it flow
Right.
with the rest of the
Right.
paragraph,
Sure.
but it doesn't change the outcome.
So K will now
It's the
say
only comment.
materials that show disrespect to any persons, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Because it's things that can't be done.
But other than that, I think the rest of it reflects what we've discussed the last time, and
I have a question, and I apologize if I'm just being thick-headed about this, I'm considering that's, but 13B,
13B.
13B, the advertising of a company name on it, and I know this was one we talked about, so, and I didn't find my material to look back, but the advertising of a company name on a scoreboard for a fixed hit at a fee shall be considered a naming rights, and we're in the advertising, right?
Yep, yes. And so we're
So
referencing it
says-
to the other policy.
So, but then it says it is not subject to the requirements of 5-6.
Well, it should say is.
Is.
Okay, so, because I'm like,
Nope,
so
you're
then we
right.
just need to take out the not.
Yeah, it should say yes.
Good call.
Which we said last time.
Yeah, that's
And then
why
it
I
just
was,
didn't carry over.
it was
Okay.
just the not, okay. That's,
So, set a fee shall.
okay.
And I guess if we're going back to change a few little words here and there, under 14A, it's nothing but, it's just a comma between endorsement and by. The editor, Jean.
All right, no comma.
No
is
comma
required.
after endorsement.
Yep,
Where's that, sorry?
On
Top of it.
14A.
no comma there.
Okay.
Any other comments?
None from me.
And I would motion that we accept these changes as described.
Actually, at the very end, it says the Director of Finance and Services.
that was-
Oh,
Oh,
I apologize.
thank
I
you.
didn't-
So this should be.
The Assistant Superintendent. I will reiterate my motion.
Have a second?
I'll second it, Kathy, you look like you're still looking.
I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on that 13B. Did we get it right? The advertising of the company name on the scoreboard, other pictures shown for a fixed time period at a fee shall not.
No, it shall be considered,
Shall
that's not
be.
the not, it's the not we're
Right.
taking out at the end.
Shall be considered a naming rights issue and
Is.
Is subject.
is subject to the other, to the naming policy. That's the naming policy. So this comes out here.
Just the not at the end of the
Oh.
sentence.
And I must have that wrong from the last meeting then. Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, so we have Mark made the motion and Marcia
seconded it.
seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
So that was the final read, am I right?
Final read on the
That's correct.
advertising on school property.
Well, because it's just
Accepted
some
with the
minor changes,
grammatical
not a
minor
first and
changes.
second.
Okay, moving on now to naming of school department facilities, SC 5.6.
So just for process, you have those changes for Karen, or do you want me to give this to Karen?
The handout that we have in our.
The one we just
No,
discussed.
the one we just marked
Oh,
up.
I'll go over it to Karen tomorrow.
All right, so you're all good. All right, so 5.6, naming of school district
Department.
entities and memorials on school property is going to be a new policy. So we've completely rewritten the existing policy, which basically means we've completely trashed the existing policy, and we're going to replace it with this. So per policy, we need to have a first read tonight, and then a second read to accept it. What I did was I took everyone's input. I would like to give special thanks to Ms. Rennie, who did a lot of work in reformatting what we had talked about last week. And then I basically took everybody's input from there and blended it into here. And for the most part, I think Marcia caught most of everything we talked about the last meeting, so there weren't too many more changes to this. So I think this is great, quite honestly. And I guess I'd open it up for any questions. So if anybody on the board needs some clarifications, we can discuss those. But this sort of encompasses everything that we talked about at length at our last meeting.
So, the only question I have, and it's part of the changes, which I don't have a problem with, is, so I picked 3 years, because we were sort of, right, and suggested that, and then there's the, in the event of a situation that you can waive the 3-year rule. I'm not clear
All right, so-
the second one, what is
Correct.
the,
So
yeah, what's the
what-
difference?
What came out in yours here is you picked 3 years.
Yeah.
So what I did was, there was input from the other members.
I understand.
So
yeah.
basically, I put or one of these other 2 options.
Oh,
there's
so
And I
three-
think one of them
there's-
was
there's
Mark's
three
suggestion
there's
and
3
one of
options.
mine.
Oh, okay,
So
because I
this-
thought
this
I
is-
and double
Right,
S.
this is,
the
no,
same.
this is one of the
Yes.
points we have to clarify.
Kind
Now,
of
This is
our
really,
decision.
there's
Okay.
really only 2 points, I believe, we really need to clarify. That's
Okay,
this
that's
one,
one. Yeah.
and whether we want to put the procedures in a separate regulation,
Mm-hmm.
which we can get to next.
Oh, okay. So,
So it looks like really the only additional input that we made that might change what you submitted, Marcia, would be whether or not we have a 3-year rule. You know, I suggested that we include a paragraph that makes that aspect more flexible. In case there is a situation where, you know, a 3-year rule would be unfortunate, where the community feels ready to honor somebody, and we wouldn't want, it's, in my opinion, that to be the one thing that prevents us from moving forward with that. So I would prefer language that gives us a little bit more flexibility, yet for people who are applying, if they get denied because it's too soon, because times are emotional, that they could come back and make their request at a later date. So that is the basis for my recommendation, which was the double I.
So, the double, I was gonna say, maybe the or could just be, in the event of an extraordinary situation present to the school committee for consideration, the committee may waive the 3-year rule, period.
I think that pretty much
Would it be
serves
as
the same
simple as that?
process.
I think it
Simply
serves the
yes.
same.
Yes.
I would, one thing I would change is under C, because it doesn't, I had worked, volunteered, I think, been a student.
Right, and I think I added that in
It's,
two.
it's in the,
Put it
it's in
in?
here, but
Yeah.
I think if we start with putting it in the first one too.
Yes.
To make sure.
Oh, right.
I mean, I sort of felt like they both said the same thing, and I don't, you know, I think in terms of that, I'll go with whatever word.
Well, I mean, I think the
people-
first decision to make is whether you're comfortable moving off of the 3-year period.
I'm
And-
comfortable with the idea that a committee may choose to waive. I don't have a strong.
And then
feeling
if
about
that's the
that.
case, it's just moving on to which language we
language?
choose. And I think they both pretty much accomplish the same goal. I think that maybe the second one is a little bit more open-ended because it says an appropriate period of time, which is a little vague.
Well, and
But-
especially if we leave, I mean, I'm thinking that we leave C and then have something under it, like just the way it's formatted, is that right? Or?
Right, because they're saying two
Which
different things,
then-
worked
so
for
the
3 years.
appropriate period in the second one, we've already said the appropriate period is 3 years. But then we say extraordinary situation, we can waive that.
I'm comfortable with that.
Well, let me clarify
Oh, okay.
2.
Okay.
because it is different.
It is different.
Field and buildings may be named after employees, students, or volunteers of APS only if an appropriate period of time has lapsed since the relationship with APS is severed by retirement or death. So basically, that means someone has to have left the system, all right? We leave it open for the committee to decide what the appropriate amount of time is for that. If the committee is not comfortable with someone coming immediately, which is basically what would happen, then it leaves you an option to have these people come back a year later, versus having a hard-coded 3 and having to make a decision every time, because no one's going to wait for 3 if you have it in there that says you can waive it. So basically, you allow people to come, and if the committee doesn't feel it's appropriate, then they say you may reapply in another year. So that's different from saying it's 3, and then you can waive it.
So
Because
that's-
if you say, in my opinion, if you say 3 and it can be waived, then everybody's going to come all the time.
But it can only be waived after a year. How about this as an idea? How about if you let the submission meet a 1-year separation, so then nobody comes before a year has passed? If we still think it's too soon, we leave in the sentence, in the event the committee finds that the request, it may be resubmitted. So then you're at a 1-year, 2-year, 3-year. That's the most anybody could come.
But they would still have to wait a year.
They'd wait a year, because that's in I, it says they must meet a 1-year. And then if we say, okay, we still think it's too soon, but you can come back in a year, then it's a 2-year, effectively.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously would choose that over 3 years, but again, my basic problem with putting any time limit on it is that, there just could be a situation where you don't need to wait a year or 2 or 3 or anything. And we would want to reserve the right to
Yeah,
be
and
able to
only
act.
the double I does it.
Yeah.
Only the double I does what? Hey, tell me again.
People can come at any point.
Could come at any point, and then the committee decides.
Then I think
But
it's,
we don't
then I
want them
think
to
we're
come at
leaving
any time,
ourselves
do
in
we?
the same situation that we are already, which is just feeling like, I think
Well,
the
you-
point of this
Well, we put the spirit
clause-
of it in there, an appropriate period of time has elapsed. We're putting the spirit, like, don't come right away, an appropriate period of time has elapsed, but we're not,
Right, if you want
Putting ourselves
a
in a
fixed
box.
period, you have to have a fixed period with no waiver allowance. You can't have both, because waiver allowance allows anyone to come anytime, right?
But that's what you're doing here anyway, aren't you?
Well-
Telling them they can come anytime?
Well, right,
After
but
a-
that's what I'm saying. You either have a
But
fixed
okay,
period or
well,
you
Let me just
don't.
start with, I don't think putting an appropriate is like worth anything, because
Yeah.
you're appropriate and my appropriate, and everybody thinks appropriate. So I think we need, if we want to time frame it, it should actually be a number. That would be my first thing. And my second thing is that, I don't know that everybody would come, because I think, well, first of all, we should have the spirit in there, and that it gives us that, well, you know what, our policy says we wait, and this does not rise to the level of something that we need to rush. I mean, isn't the idea for us to be able to say to people, we honor your request, it's not a disrespect, it's just simply, it's too soon. And I guess I would want, and I'm thinking future committees, I would want to preserve that for future committees. And I also think that there are plenty of people thinking about doing naming for people who have been, where that period has already elapsed. There's plenty of subjects out there.
and I think that's what went into my mind when I was trying to make it more flexible, because especially now we have all these new opportunities for naming, and the period of time may have elapsed for a whole bunch of people that are gonna come forward and make their application, and they fit into this criteria, and then there's somebody who we're so sure would be the right candidate, but we can't entertain their request because the year hasn't passed. Why would we want to close that off?
So I don't see a problem with giving a limit, saying 3 years or 2 years, with a comma and saying, but the school committee reserves the right to entertain any request, I guess. So somebody could come forward and say, it's only been a year, but I really want you to look at it. And we can say, well, all right, the policy says we have to wait 3 years, but we will look at your request. I don't see a problem with that.
That's what one says.
The I, this one?
So you have.
That's what
see,
one, but it also
you have
says that there's a 1 year.
If the committee
But at
doesn't
no
agree.
point, it says, but at no point grant something that does not meet 1 year separation. So,
We'd have to draft different
The
language.
That's
committee
what
may,
that says.
may waive the 3-year rule.
Right.
But at no point grant an approval to a submission that does not meet. So, I think we're building in there that, you know, we're not being, saying no, absolutely nothing before 3 years. We're building in there that we would consider something. We're not saying we would accept it, but we would consider it.
right, but not after 6 months, for instance. Is that,
Yeah.
understood?
Because
That's-
otherwise,
so I guess
I
that's
just
the
think
question for
you're
this
gonna have
committee.
people, we're kind of undermining, I think we're undermining what we're trying to do if we say, oh, but you can come after a year and then come after 2, and so,
Well, you could say the same about the other, doing it the other way, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
You have to wait 3 years, but if you want to
Yeah.
come sooner, come on.
yeah.
So, I mean,
That
there's,
is an effect.
Well, the question really is, and this is going back to the various procedures we've seen. Some had time, some left it up to the committee. The question is, do we want a procedure that, A, either ties the hands of the committee so it can't be sooner than whatever the time we pick, or gives the committee an automatic excuse that you can't come? Or do you want the committee to have the flexibility to adjudicate whoever comes when, based on the merits that are in the criteria? That's the question we have here.
well, that's what I'm more
We added
comfortable
quite a
with.
bit of criteria, so
Right.
there's, that's the other way to look at it. If you want a hard fixed time, then, and we're leaning towards 1 year being the hard fixed time, then you simply use C and say 1 year, period.
Not
You know,
3,
it's
just say
not
1.
unusual to put some kind of a time frame on it, and I do respect what you're saying, which is this idea, but, I'm hoping that this committee is not gonna rush and just, and I know there's been some push to sort of get things named, but the idea of naming something to me, and we've said it's a permanent name, I would hope this committee and future committees would take plenty of time and reserve these very special honors. So my sense is that we will not, quote, run out of things to name. So, you know what I mean?
I
think-
do, but
I
this
think
gives us a chance to say, we're not comfortable yet. You need to come back in a year. So it doesn't mean we have to say no, and then they've lost their opportunity.
I absolutely, okay, let me just, so, I would really like to leave in a timeframe. I really would. I am comfortable, since it's this committee, I would be comfortable with putting in some kind of waiver, but I would just really, that would be my preference, is that we absolutely, by standard agreement, we have a waiting period, because, and it's not unusual to do that. We have that for our Hall of Fame. You cannot be inducted into our Hall of Fame unless a separation period has occurred. It's part of how a lot of these kind of honors work. And I think it's reflective of how important this honor is, and I think it doesn't diminish the honor, it actually enhances the honor. But your reasoning stands the test of time, and your commitment to this community and all of that stands, so that's how I feel. It's not, to me, that makes it even more special, that, you have to
No,
do it.
I mean,
So that's how I
yeah.
feel.
So, well, if
Whatever.
you're willing to have a waiver, then you could reword 2, double I. Fields and buildings may be named after employees, students, or volunteers of APS only after a 1-year period of time has elapsed since the relationship with APS is severed by retirement or death. In the event the committee finds that the request, oh, no, then you'd have to.
Right, you'd have to just get rid of that
Then you'd have to use the
sentence.
waiver piece from up top, right? So do you want a year and a waiver, or do you want a year only, is my question?
Here and a waiver.
The ability to waive it.
So
So
we
you
have
would
the
have
point
the
of
first
only-
sentence
So I'm
in,
misunderstanding in a way. We are talking about an only 1-year waiting period, or are we talking about a 3-year wait? For the standard, what's the standard language in here that we're going for? Because I was reading this wrong. Now I'm sort of seeing that this was like, these were 3 choices. It was C,
Right.
I, or 2.
Or 2.
Right.
2,
Right.
okay.
So,
I had thought that that the I or the 2 followed the C. So you
No.
guys are
That's how I read it
thinking,
too.
that's how you read it too?
that's how I read
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But you're saying,
There
what
were
are we
3
saying?
options.
There's
They're
3
the ones
options.
that you
3
proposed,
options.
and then the proposed changes, which came on right under that.
So C, I, or double I.
so C is
changes.
effectively a fixed period of time.
But if you combine, which is the way I was reading, it sounds like you, if you combine C with one of the others, some language, then what you do is you set that 3-year bar, which, and maybe this committee doesn't, but I just want to be clear on that. You set a 3-year bar, but then you say, we could do something sooner. Is there any interest in doing that?
I'm not comfortable with
Do
the
you think 3 years is too long?
You don't want any years, or
I'd
2
pref-
years?
The first 3 years under C, is that the part that you're most uncomfortable with?
Under C, yes. I would
Yeah.
not want somebody to have to wait 3 years after separation to make an application for a naming. I just think it ties the hands of the committee. I think it's too long. That's my,
Well, what if we just did, just another option, what if we just said 1 year? And nothing about a waiver?
Just 1 year
Wait 1
flat,
year.
period.
And this
No-
ended.
Nothing sooner. I wouldn't, yeah,
I mean, that's another option,
that
right?
is an option.
I would certainly be more comfortable with that. I mean, my only comment again about that is that why wouldn't we want the provision that gives us the most flexibility? It's 1 year and then it's done and there's no waiver and there's no other way to deal with it. And so if we get a situation that presents itself.
Tell me why any situation needs to be so urgent when we're naming a field that's permanent.
It's not about it
and
being
forever.
urgent. It's really more about not excluding something that might come along that is appropriate. It's not about rushing anything.
But it
I
would probably
understand,
be
but
there in a year.
in a
wouldn't
year,
it?
you're still-
If it's that important
if
to
it's in-
that group, wouldn't
That's
it,
how I feel.
wouldn't that need still be there in a year?
It may be, but maybe you don't need to
Or
wait
two.
the year, so why?
Well, that's the principle, I guess,
I
Brooke.
guess
See,
putting
I would
space
tend to
between
agree,
it.
and if I might just add to, and I hear exactly what you're saying, but in this particular case, I do agree with both of you, for the sake of a year. I thought you did a nice job tonight articulating that importance and that honoring, and I hear what you're saying. I think by going to the 1 year, you've done a nice job of blending the two thought process from my perspective, because you've eliminated the 3-year piece, so that kind of gets away from your, I think the 1 year is a nice, I think it's a very nice way to come together and wrap it up, because I hear exactly
No,
what you're saying.
I could live with that. I was
Yeah.
just pointing out why the other option would make me a little bit more comfortable, but
Yeah.
I could live with the 1 year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we can think about it too, right? We're not deciding
Well, this
tonight,
is
or are
the
we trying
first
to
Well, it's
decide?
a
This is your
first
first
reading, so we
reading,
want to
so-
put it into the kind of shape that we can read it the second time
All right.
at
Yeah.
our next meeting and.
You both have very, very valid points, so really, I hear exactly where you're coming from, but I think by removing the 3 years, it's a nice compromise.
So it would be C with just 1 year.
Person may not have worked, so we're saying the person may not have worked, volunteered, or been a student? Did you want to add that in
Or
there?
been a
Martha?
student in the school system.
Or a
Well,
student
it's actually somebody else's language. I like, how is it they put somebody?
for the school system for,
I
Fields
don't
and
know.
buildings may be named after employees, students, or volunteers, only if 1 year period of time has elapsed since
No,
the
I guess I just, yeah.
Okay.
Well-
So
but then,
use two, but
isn't
take,
two-
I guess I want to make sure that we're not, it's not just going to be these folks, right?
Isn't it?
employees, students, or volunteers.
No, I mean, it could be anybody, and it's
Right.
that business about,
Yeah.
but in any case, so we would need to work on that language, but
Well,
Even with that, though, I think that Mr. Jewett could probably go back and,
that's what I mean.
and
Right.
he knows the spirit that you're looking for.
Right.
And certainly I have great trust in his capacity to create policy. Because really, I mean.
right, as long as we agree on the major.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
then
and
you're
that-
coming back at your second reading, and
The idea
you
of that
can, yeah.
relationship has been a
Yes.
year. It's been a
Yeah.
year. Because, and I would, I guess that was the other point, is that something about, something severed by retirement or death. I'd be very careful about that, because that may not be.
The case.
why
No,
it's
I
severed.
understand, and
So-
that I'm not stuck on that.
Yeah.
And I really could live with the 1 year. Again, I would have
So it
preferred
would
the
be
built-in
1 year
flexibility, but
firm.
I'm fine with the year.
Okay, I mean, I would prefer the 3 years, and I'm fine with the year, so we're sort of
Well, we
meeting
could
in
do
the
two.
middle. We'll go for 1.5 years.
Let's just stick with the one. It'd
But
be
going
good.
back to this option though, the double I there, the lies. I don't even know if you're gonna take that and keep that, but to me, it doesn't seem like you have to spell it out like that. Fields and buildings may be named after
No.
employees, students. Because aren't we saying,
No, I already wrote
Anyone
down
can
fix
be-
the who part, individuals.
Okay.
all right, okay.
Okay. so-
Because then those
so Mark, we'll leave
individuals
this to you.
All right, good.
are bound by the criteria.
Yeah,
So the person must have significant contributions to the community of Ashland.
right.
That contribution may have been to the education of Ashland youth or to the well-being of the greater community through leadership, scholarship, service, or other appropriate contribution.
All right, good.
So it's just an
Okay.
individual, the individual.
In individual, yeah.
Right.
All right, great.
Okay.
Right. So you'll work on that for the next week. Okay,
Excellent.
Need a motion to accept the changes? No?
do we, or?
We're
Okay.
just accepting this as
No.
It's a
So
first
we're,
read.
we're marking up our
Okay.
first read here.
All
Okay.
right, good.
Okay.
Anything else? So
No.
the second question was,
Second
in the
Procedures.
procedure section, should this be a regulation?
In-
From
What
my-
does that mean? Because I don't know, I
It
don't
should-
know
We,
what that
we,
means.
in our policy book, we have policies and regulations,
All right,
which are sort of rules over the policies. I've looked at a
Okay.
couple others. This is pretty standard language in the policies of others, so I wouldn't move it to a separate
So-
document.
I would keep it exactly where it is, because it's
Right.
just a natural flow.
Okay.
That would just be my
Alright.
personal opinion.
Okay, so moving down, well,
Go right
in
ahead.
number 5 there,
Yeah, we already,
step 8
already had that.
would really be step 9, because I think you
Oh,
added
we
an
moved
8.
it.
yeah, yes.
So that would, just to read right, that should be step
Oh, right,
9.
actually, that's not time is- that's
Yeah.
number nine.
Did you guys have any comments before 1 through
Because
5
we
there?
added something and it's now a 9?
Yeah,
so
number
step
8 is new,
Yeah,
I
you're correct,
think.
you're correct.
Okay, right.
Did you guys have anything else in 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5?
No,
Or
I like,
something in
I like
6?
that 8, I think that's good.
Okay. Yeah, I like that you could jump to step 9. How about number 6?
How about it?
Oh, the members.
I'm not sure about, should the which may include the superintendent? I'm not sure, what do you guys think? I'm not sure the superintendent should be one of the school staff members.
Well, I
you
added
think?
that, because that's in many of the policies,
it?
and the way we
So
had
what
it
do you
written
guys
was the
think?
superintendent couldn't be on the committee.
Yeah.
But I think it's the superintendent's discretion if they want to be on the committee, it's my view. That's why I said, which may include the superintendent, it wasn't here before.
Yeah. You're all right with that?
I'm fine with it, it doesn't force the superintendent
I was
to
just
Right.
saying,
sit,
should
but
the
You
it
don't
allows-
have to
superintendent,
be, but
should
if
the
it-
superintendent remain
If it's important
independent
enough and
from
we
that
need that oversight,
Well,
then
Yes.
you get to do that.
I understand, yeah.
Going back to
Yeah.
number 3, I really just had one quick question about that, where it says nominators may request that the committee consider alternative ways to honor the request. And it was really just a question about, is it the nominator's burden to say, if I don't get approved for X, then consider me for Y? Or could the committee come back and say, you don't qualify for Y, but we would consider X? We've put that burden on the nominators, and if they don't really know that they could make an alternative request.
Well, right, I think another way to put that is nominators, is to put that into the procedure, which is that the committee may, at its discretion.
Yeah, and that's what I wrote,
And that
do I
wording,
put the committee there
At
instead
its
of.
discretion may choose another thing, and then it's just a given for the people. So I agree with you, that's another way to look at it, and it'd be fine with me.
Okay.
So we would add in language there?
So
Is that what you're saying?
instead of having the nominators may request, you would say the committee may, and which committee is it? This is the,
The school committee? Oh, yeah, which committee? The
school
subcommittee?
committee or
This
the
is the
subcommittee?
subcommittee.
Okay, the subcommittee? So take out nominators, it would read.
So it would say, the committee may
subcommittee
consider alternative ways to honor the request of the nominator if
Okay.
that is deemed appropriate.
okay,
Alternative ways
that's
to
good.
honor the request of the nominator.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, so I jumped back, but going back down to number
That's fine.
6, if we've,
So you don't think the superintendent should remain independent of this subcommittee? No one else feels that way?
Question of whether the superintendent would prefer to stay away from this. It's kind of an interesting question, isn't
you
it?
know.
It is, because
So we
it's
have to think of-
in some ways, it's more of a political question than it is an
Right.
instructional, educational piece. However, having said that, I do think that you're gonna find, and it's kind of almost similar to Lori's thinking earlier, there are gonna be times where your superintendent will have knowledge that the committee may not. I really think that I think it would behoove you to have the superintendent play a role in whatever that looks like. They don't have to be necessarily voting member, but I think that it would be important to have them to have input, but not on the ultimate decision.
Okay. So then this language would work, which may include, or do you want it to,
Well,
which
you wanna
which
preserve-
shall
Who pulls
include?
together this
Your-
subcommittee again? Is it the superintendent pulls the subcommittee, or is it?
The superintendent's office assembles basic information and
3 members from the community, 2 school staff members designated by the superintendent, so it
The
doesn't say.
chair of
The
the
chair.
school board sets up the committee.
Okay,
Or is
it doesn't say that.
it doesn't say.
It does.
Does it?
That's what I'm trying to remember. Yes, number 4. No, puts on an agenda, and then the school committee may vote to, or it may vote to convene a subcommittee.
School committee in place as in-
Yeah, I had a, because I remember when I was reviewing it, I had a question about
Who's?
why the chair,
It may-
because at one point, the chair of the school committee was on the
The
subcommittee,
school committee.
or in some of the ones
Yeah,
that
so
I.
I think I took some of this, when I was writing this, I
Yeah.
was taking it from that one from last week and just kind of working from it.
So if we just add, a subcommittee
Okay.
formed for this purpose will consist of 3 members of the community selected by the chair of the school committee by lottery. What do folks want for that language?
No, well,
Any members
actually, the
submit a
intent here is,
request.
if you read the last sentence of
Mm-hmm.
6, is that the superintendent is setting up the committee.
Choose
The chair
Or choose to
charges the
name more.
superintendent to do it.
Okay,
So the question
Yeah,
is, do
so
you want
the
the
s-
superintendent to do it or the chair to do
The
it?
school committee decides a subcommittee needs
Is
to
needed.
happen.
Correct.
And
Right.
then, so, yeah, do we want the
I think it's
superintendent to pull
it's
together?
an
or the-
administrative task at that point, or
So
man,
we'll let
it's,
the
because,
superintendent pull it together?
right? Of course, we do give the superintendent the discretion, but see, I think that's,
So if the superintendent is in charge of pulling together the subcommittee, then the superintendent doesn't necessarily have to be one of the staff members, but oversees the subcommittee, no? Or,
they
well,
would,
you've
I think
selected.
administratively, it's easier to pull this kind of thing together out of our offices, quite
I
frankly.
agree.
Yeah.
Because we've just got
So
the
it would
instant
be in
access
there.
to everything,
Right.
so
Okay.
it would make sense just administratively to do it that way.
Okay, so just,
and we're doing it
All
by
right.
lottery, I think it's,
all right,
I
that's fine.
think
And
it's
then, so
fine.
if the
Yeah.
superintendent wants to be on it, that's fine. Or you could pick 2 and still, you would still oversee it.
I still think you need to have input from your superintendent.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, because honestly, I do think that there would be certain things that superintendent will have access to that other people might not.
so would you put the superintendent may remain a non-voting member of the subcommittee?
You can word that however you
Yeah.
want to, but it's something.
well, how about
I'm-
just the way it's worded, which is it may include the superintendent,
Right.
that gives you.
That
I was
gives you
gonna say, you still
discretion
have
if
the
you wanna be-
discretion through the
Right.
verbiage that's already in existence.
Why don't we leave that?
I was just, you leave it the way it is?
Leave it the way it
Yeah,
is.
that's what
Yeah,
I'm saying,
yeah.
because then you
Yeah.
could sit on it, or you can designate somebody and tell them what you know, share the information,
Mhm.
7?
Right.
depending on your schedule. I like that.
I have nothing else.
Okay, moving on to number 7.
I have something on 8.
8?
Number 8,
Um,
Ms. Bates.
I think we can say, I think we can strike, so it says, in addition to the nomination and accompanying materials, the subcommittee is expected to provide a rationale for its final recommendation to the school committee supplemented, blah, blah, blah. So I think we can take out or school committee.
Right.
I added that, because without putting that in there, you could go to 9 and the school committee could do what they want without any rationale.
In addition to the nomination
Go
and
to- say again?
accompanying materials.
If you go right to 9, the school committee has no requirement other than to say, we like this person, and
Well, I
Thank you
changed,
very
but I
much.
changed
if
some
you
wording
drop
in
that,
9.
all right, well,
I
okay.
changed some
If you
wording
want to
in
drop
9.
that down to 9, that's
But
fine.
let me
Yes,
tell
we
you that
did.
what's in 9.
Yeah, we had dropped that to 9, right?
And then I added some stuff in here, because I think I was thinking, what are you saying?
I'm talking to myself, go ahead.
So in 9, I was saying, the school committee shall receive the recommendation of the subcommittee in an open session.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
The announcement of that recommendation, comma, or the school committee's acceptance of a naming, nomination, or memorial request, comma, shall be made no less, and then it just continues. Because if you go back to,
Right, but this is my point. So what you're saying, the announcement of that recommendation comma.
It needs to be made public, right? And if
Right.
the school committee has made a decision where we skipped to number 9, where
Right.
does it say where we dropped to 9?
Number
If-
5.
Number
Number
5,
four.
if we go all the way, if the school committee says, oh, great, we want to accept that.
It just means the
you
school
still
committee
have
can
to
make,
Make
right,
it public.
right, you still have to do,
That we accepted something without going through steps 6, 7, 8.
correct. All I'm saying is in 8,
Yeah.
the school committee has the same is expected to provide the same rationale for their sole decision as the subcommittee
subcommittee
is
does,
to
yes.
provide. Otherwise, the school committee
Well,
has
then
no.
maybe we
Oh,
say
so
that down here, though. The school committee has to say why they accepted a.
You don't have to, it's an 8.
Give their
You
rationale.
don't,
It's an 8,
you
then
don't
you don't
blow by
switch it.
7 and 8 just because you go to 9. 9 gives you the opportunity to do it,
But
do
we
the
do say that. We say.
committee
drop-
yourself.
We do say drop to 9, so.
So maybe we
If in
should go
fact
back
the
and
school
switch
committee's
that.
gonna make the decision themselves. They still have to follow the rules that are in the procedure.
Right, that's why I was trying to put it in 9, because we say skip to 9.
They proceed directly to steps, so
Right,
maybe
and
we
all-
should
and
say
all-
proceed to Just another one.
So I'm
where we
saying-
need-
All I'm saying is
Your
skip to
rationale,
9
put it
doesn't
in
mean you
9.
forget about the requirements
Okay,
in
so
8.
let's
Right, and that's why she's wanting to
Right.
add
Rather
that,
than
that's
why you
all.
add it
And I
in
understand.
9.
All right.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
So then I-
so do we agree on the sort of the general?
spirit?
and then
Yes,
can
we
do
do,
that
right?
outside of
We
the
want-
I would agree.
I
We
would
want the
agree.
subcommittee and the school committee to say
To
why.
have to do a
the
Right.
rationale.
Both.
So that has to
let's-
be in there
I'll
somewhere.
figure out a way to put that in 9.
That'd be
This was-
great.
This was
Thank
my
you.
suggestion of getting that rationale in there.
You're doing a great job.
Okay. So this is just a first read, so we can clean
Yank
this
is
stuff up.
loving
Mark,
this stuff.
yeah. Mark, if you don't mind, I'll
Thinking.
also send you.
I am so
some
happy
stuff.
I'm going into engineering and not public service. You can do
Send
both now,
comments
of
to
course.
Mark again, and then he can clean this language.
Okay, so
Would you like mine next?
I love it.
anybody who has comments can send them directly to Mr. Jewett.
So
and-
I would motion that we accept this a first read with the intention of the changes that are gonna be made, so when we meet the next time, it can be a second read and not a re-first read.
Yes.
Yes.
That's a second?
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You wanna put your signature on that?
Moving on, we have a student travel request from Ashland High School to Costa Rica. No?
We have no one to ask questions?
Can I represent that,
Yes.
meaning that I get to go if it's voted in?
You can ask questions to them.
Who would I, oh, ask these guys?
Superintendent,
Okay.
yep.
Let me just
Miss-
find my.
Mrs. Tossi, did you
Yes.
do that? She would, Dr. Stickney would gladly speak to, if there are any additional questions.
If you want to just give us a quick, just rundown on what this is and why it's on the agenda.
Sure. Mrs. Graham has, this would be the second time that she has proposed and would take a group of students on this particular trip. It is a trip that happens at the beginning of, the end of June, so it would be the beginning of summer vacation. She is looking to and proposing to take a group of students to Costa Rica to to work with an organization that assists in doing scientific research and protection of sea turtles. So they actually go out and help conduct the research and participate in the care and protection.
And about how many students went on the trip the last time? Do you know, Kathy?
I believe it was less than 10.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
Anybody else?
I have more like safety questions. So what's the ratio? If she puts down 1 to 9 students, is it just her going with 9 students? Because I was thinking, shouldn't there be another adult along?
It is, what they do is when she puts down 1 to 9 students, that means that the company that she does the business with, one chaperone would go free. So if there are any other chaperones that go, they go at a reduced cost. So then she opens it up to other staff members, and typically there are other
So
staff
others.
members that would volunteer to go.
So it's not just her going by herself with the students?
I think it depends on how many
Yeah, if there were
in the
4,
past,
or
yes, she
we
would go
go.
by herself.
Right.
Because there are other adults at the facility that, of course, have been quarried and cleared to work with children on a
And so,
regular basis.
since they went last year, I'm assuming somebody researched the company that is offering it, it's all safe and
It's the
everything?
same, yes.
Okay, any other questions? Does anyone make, oh, go ahead.
I do have
Mrs.
one
Bates.
more.
Go ahead.
Maybe it doesn't even matter. The transportation to the airport, are you just taking Logan Express, or?
I don't honestly
know.
know the answer to that question.
Because then that's fine, we know that's.
Oftentimes, the students, I know in my experience with
The
students,
parents
responsible to
drive
get
them
there.
in and drive them back.
Yes.
Yep, right, exactly.
I have offered to be a chaperone.
I think Mark wants to be.
I think we have as well.
Yeah.
So do
I'm
you
on
know,
the wait
Dr.
list.
Stickney, is there any process when the students come back of interviewing them about how the trip went and whether they felt safe and whether they felt it was efficiently run?
That is an excellent question. I don't know as though we typically, other than inviting students to come back and report, we always
Put
ask
something in the
the
procedure.
teacher who has conducted the trip to give us a report and provide us with feedback and paperwork. But we
Oh, I thought we,
don't typically have a student come and report necessarily.
This is the latest one.
I was gonna say, Mark and I are both remembering
think it's
that
in
we.
This is not the
we-
latest one, I don't think.
He's
Oh.
saying it's not
We
the
did
latest
have
one.
a presentation.
We
Doesn't-
did,
Well,
well,
that
no, it's
doesn't
not so
mean
much a
it's the latest
presentation,
one.
but we
Where
did
is it? In the
create
book?
something, and I hope it made it to the latest policy or regulation. We
I mean, I
created a
didn't go on my
feedback loop because we wanted there to be feedback following trips by, how was your experience? Just because we had had some field trips where we had some feedback in the community that wasn't formalized, and we thought we needed a more
Yeah, I-
formalized way.
I
And
do
so
believe we made a change to the policy, although
I
it
thought
isn't
so.
reflected here, so we might want to check the
we
website and
need
see
to
if it's
check and see if
updated.
it's up.
I got off the website.
But the-
Okay, so we
I
may
didn't
not
get
have
it out.
updated
Well,
it.
sometimes.
Do I have a book of
We
policies
have
at
been
home?
conducting that. I
You've
do
been
have a
doing it.
collection of those that
Great.
I
So
bring
we've
with
been
me.
doing it, and so we
Yes.
need to make sure the policy is reflected on the website that we
This is
did in
what's
our
online.
meeting, whenever that
I
happened.
found stuff on the
I'll go
website.
back
As
to
a
my
matter of
notes.
fact, I probably have her follow-up from
Updated in the
the
master
trip
book and on the
2
website.
summers ago in my file
Excellent.
that I could bring next time if you'd like.
Well, it
Do we
looks like
need
a
more
great
discussion on
trip.
this, or is anybody ready to
This is
make a
a cool
motion
trip.
to approve the
I'll
trip?
make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Travel request approved. Okay. We are now moving on to a discussion about the policy manual. That was one of our action items, to take a good look at that policy manual and see, I think we talked about it a meeting or two ago. We talked about what our plans were to sort of take a good look at it. And then come back with maybe some suggestions of different new policies, reworking some old policies, delegating policy writing to some others who are more expert in their particular fields. And just in starting this work, I thought maybe we should have an initial discussion about just how to organize the policy manual. And I'm just wondering if any of my colleagues have any thoughts on that. When I went out to start making some comparisons, I noticed that many of the communities that I looked at, I almost want to say all of them, probably not all of them, but the
ones
large,
that are online,
the greater
likely.
percentage, the ones that are online, seem to have either adopted the MASC system, which is different from ours, just in terms of organization, or it looks very similar to that. So just before I took the whole policy manual apart, I thought it would be useful to have a discussion about how we want to organize our policy manual. I'm wondering if anybody has any thoughts on that.
Well, let me provide a little background on
Yes,
how we
please.
got where we are,
Yes.
because we have new people at the table. The policy manual that we were confronted with when we all, Kathy Bach's not here, but
You
Mr.
and
Jewett and Kathy and myself, that needed severe updating, had some real problems because it was numbered sequentially. And so if a policy disappeared, there would be a hole, and you'd be like, why is there not a policy 2? You know?
Okay.
And you didn't know, so there was just
Yeah.
that bookkeeping thing. Then there was the issue of just sort of organization. So when we did this the last time, we looked into exactly this, and it had been the recommendation of our superintendent, Dr. Hoffman, at the time, that we adopt that. And at the time I looked into it, and at the time we were undergoing severe budget cuts, and it was there's a licensing
There's a
fee.
cost, yeah.
There's a cost, and it's an annual cost to to maintain that system. So at the time, we just made the decision, no, we would have to go independently. So that's how we came. I just wanted to give new members that.
Yeah.
No,
That's how we came to be where we
A
are.
cost for what? To have MASC
Not, it isn't
manage
even,
it,
it isn't
or-
even about having them write the policy, it's to use their system. Their system is like, if I recall correctly, you've looked at it more recently, but it's, they look at things by subject. So if it's a student-related, it has one letter. If it's academic-related, it's got that letter. If it's also, I don't know, help me out, maybe
Right, if
safety.
it's cross-referenced
So
with-
you look at the letters for that policy, and it's got several letters, and it means that it's related to here and here and here. And so presumably, you cross-index and cross-relate.
So are you saying there's a cost because,
Because they created the system, it's proprietary.
and you use their system?
If you use their
Or do
system, you pay
mean-
for it,
Or do you mean just like copying their format?
using their system.
Using their system.
Going on to like their website?
Well, they work with you, as far as I understand
right.
it, and they help you formulate policies that are appropriate for your community, but you're using their system, so when there are updates, you get informed about them, they follow the law. I mean, we get these updates
Alright.
anyway, but it just,
It's almost like buying a software program.
Alright,
You
okay.
put your stuff in it, but
Yeah,
it's
alright.
always got changes and you're
right, and
always
so they
paying.
basically
Or we do
assist
it
you with
ourselves.
managing your policy manual, and, you know, at first, my bigger concern was just the organizational piece in terms of the being able to use our policy manual easily and get around it and know where to find things. And also, you know, there are a couple different layers to it. The comfort level, knowing that policies are updated, that they're consistent with the law. And so I just wanted to know more about why we might choose our system over their system, hear more about the pros and cons, anyone here who might know what they are, other than the cost, which certainly at your time, it sounded like that was just a deal breaker because we were cutting teachers and cutting programs, and that wasn't an option. But if at some point it becomes a financial option, I'd be interested in hearing about what the other pros and cons are to adopting
Well,
that system.
from my perspective, if I could
Please.
speak to it, I do like the MESC approach. Having said that, though, I love the detail that, and the discussion, and the lengthy discussion, even that, I love as I listen to you work through your policies. In a perfect world, I would love to see a blend, because yours are so made in Ashland policies with something that MESC already provides. My biggest concern right now is that, firstly, all of those policies, the MESC policies, have been run past legal counsel. So that's the first thing. There's a level of comfort, you brought up level of comfort, and I'm gonna spring from that. There's a certain level of comfort because you know that every single policy from MESC has already been run through legal counsel. And certainly, when I'm in a legal situation, the first question our lawyer asks is, ship me a copy of your policy. And it's always a little unnerving if you don't know if your policy has been run past legal counsel previously. So that kind of leaves you with a little bit level of exposure that I want to point out that little bit can cost you a lot of money. I mean, that little bit of exposure could cost you an easy $10,000 to $25,000, depending on whatever it is. So you kind of have to balance the cost of the policy process of MESC with that. So that's one thing. The other piece is, you're right, everything, you're consistently kept updated of the new policies that are coming on stream, and there are a lot. I mean, when we take a look this summer, we had a number this summer, you know, and the other piece is, you're right, it is an ongoing cost every year. I want to say it's $1,000 every year now, some such. I think it's about $1,000 every year, something like that, if memory serves me right. The costs, though, I did speak with Glenn Kuchar, this is a couple months ago, so forgive me if it's wrong, but I'm quite certain that whatever the cost was, we were able to break that up over a 3-year period. So let's say that it was, I don't know, let's say it's $6,000, it would be $2,000 basically every year, or if it was $9,000, or I just can't remember what it was. So there is that level of sensitivity to it. The other thing that I guess, and I know that's probably just repeating myself, but your chances of having no holes in your policies is just about nil, because they've got all the policies. They've got legal teams on it that are watching it all the time. So your chances for finding yourself in a situation, especially a relatively new situation, and I will use the transgender as a prime example right now, because our listservs are full of that kind of thing right now. And I'm thinking, I hope that all of our policies are all aligned right now with what's coming down on transgender, because we're reading about it every day. Is that a situation that we're dealing with at this second? No, but you can't make the policy once you've already got something in front of you. You kind of need to have that policy ahead of time. So those are just some of the things that go through my mind. I do like how the organization of an MASC policy handbook, I would say that too. But it's certainly not in any way, shape, or form. I think you can move ahead with that if you so chose, and brought in your Maiden Ashland policies, because I think that they're very, very good. So I think you can come up with a nice blend and hit everything. So just my perspective.
Yeah,
Thank you, Bert.
I think it's interesting because, we've done a lot of work, and they are sort of, as you say, Made in Ashland. I think the critical ones we have run by council, and I do agree that there's still some indexing issues with what we have, and it would be, on first blush, I would say what we should do is check our index against Mass Index. Whatever we're missing, we have to look at creating those, tie them up, figure a way to make sure that the updates that we do see end up getting processed into the procedures we have. But I have to be honest, the more I think about it, it does only take one hit, one miss, and
Yes.
We're penny wise, pound foolish at that point. We're looking down. So, looking at the money purse, and if in fact, we could make it work, it'd probably be a good idea to price it and then, have a little further discussion. And the last piece is, I don't mind doing this, but it's an effort.
Oh,
And
sure.
and this is easy stuff.
Right.
I mean, to think the fact that we really do have to take another serious effort to overhaul what we have. And, we've got a changing board.
Well, and I'm thinking of, and you were
Ti-
talking before about,
timing
like,
is completely
committees coming
different
down
than it
the
was
road.
before.
Right.
Yeah, if the trend is, if that's where the trend is, and then we're trying to
Absolutely.
see whether we're keeping up.
Yeah.
And it's just not looking the same. It doesn't mean that our policies are any less well-written. They're
No.
there somewhere, it's not a commentary on the policy itself. It's
Not
just
at all.
about how to manage the book, how to keep up with it, how to find things. That's really the discussion that I want to have right now. So if that's something that we can all agree that we can look into.
We'd be happy to look into
I
that.
was gonna say, I would like to I'd like to nail down the cost and how that would
Yeah.
work, but also if we could nail down what it is obviously, it's the other piece, what is it we're paying for?
Right,
'Cause,
what are we getting?
let's remember that we already do get all of MASC's, like the transgender thing, we voted on that, and I believe our policies were updated. They do send us as a part of our membership that we are updated on all of theirs, and I don't have a problem with doing this. And if we're talking $1,000, $2,000, I mean, to me, that, I don't think it's
Well,
even a
and
discussion.
I think
thought
it's-
it was more at the time,
Yeah,
that's
well,
why
it might have seemed more at the time.
Maybe it seemed more, and that's
Yeah.
why.
And maybe they'll
Yes.
figure it out so that it doesn't cost as much, but I think to your point, it's, my other question around the fact that we get information is, what is the legal timing? I mean, if we're on their system and they update a policy for whatever topic, if we're legally covered, then that's different than us reading it, figuring it out,
But
and
is
putting
it-
it in. How does that timing work? So,
Wouldn't
does
we
it
still
take
need to
away
adopt it?
all risk and exposure?
Really what you're asking for, does it limit your exposure?
Right, exactly.
I don't know that I have an instant answer on that, but I mean, for example, there'll be times where, I'm trying to think, I'm looking even at the emergency one that we've got in place right now. There are times that you can put that forward and you say, this will have to keep us as we're working through X, Y, and Z, whatever that looks like, as we, in this case, are redeveloping our plans in each building. So it kind of covers you to that level. There are times like that where it comes forward. And then MASC is right there in your back corner saying, we happen to know that they've got this in place already, we happen to know, so you almost have a friend there that knows exactly what you're doing. Again, it goes back to your comment, there's a level of comfort that's just there with it. And I like how you articulated it too, this is not in any way, shape, or form a negative in any way, shape, or form with regards to what's already in place.
No, and I think,
no, I
you
don't
know,
think
we haven't
anybody's
got in
feeling
trouble
that.
with anything
Nobody's
that's in
worried
place,
about
but that's
that,
not, I'm really not worried about what's in place as
Yeah.
much as I am, you know, what we're missing.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
I
And
think
that's
we've
and our
all
ability to
concerned
keep
that.
up.
Yeah.
But this is my second part of the question in terms of what they provide. And then do we adopt something wholesale? I mean, or are we still, they're gonna provide this big manual, are we still slogging through it? Because we have to one by one go through.
Well,
And how quickly does that all work?
You know, part of that, though, again, I think that we had said this even when you first started this process. This will probably take a year or 2 years to do this. And, you know, I know that I had made the suggestion, could you please cross-reference it with MASC? And that was the whole rationale behind doing that. But I guess what I'm saying is some of those, from my experience, what you can do is you can bring just a slate of 10 to the table and go through them all quickly, because a lot of them are very similar in nature to what you've already got. So you're not gonna spend the type of time that you're spending on the policies that you're creating right now.
Right.
You know, they're not like that, but they are nice ones, again, because they're gonna limit your exposure, your legal exposure.
And so, but that would be my point, is that we will still, and that's why I wanna go back to what it is we're gonna get for
Yeah.
the money, because
What's our flexibility?
we are still gonna
We wanna
need to do,
individualize
there's
it.
nothing stopping us from the very real work of reading through and moving through, and we actually, what we're talking about is someone from MASC pulling them together versus, like, say, Lori or I, or, you know, and so that to me is a great thing.
Yes, and I'm quite certain that they do kind of send somebody along with this whole process initially, whether it's Mike or Pat or whoever, so, but definitely I'll look into that and I can feed that back to you.
Excellent, that's great.
Thank you.
That would be good.
Okay, so we are moving right along. We are going to now talk about our action items and future agenda items. So, let's see, gotta get to mine. Yeah, I might have to share, Marcia. Oh, thank you. Okay, so policy assignments. And that, we have that ongoing, and I guess we can put that on hold a little bit, although we do, we have that October 1st, which has passed, deadline for sort of getting some feedback from administrators and so forth about any policy changes that need to be made. Do we?
See, that's the part that and that's why I don't wanna belabor that, but there is nothing to get this committee away from policy work, because that is what this body does.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. 3 key roles for school committee, and policy is like one of those 3. So you're absolutely right. You can't get away from policy work. And even if you do buy in with the MASC concept, you're still not gonna get away from the work that has to happen.
Absolutely.
We
Yeah.
have to do
Yeah,
that,
that-
so it'll be nice sort of, it's like having, I'm thinking of, like, this is what I wanna hear, it's like a staff person who's working. We have a staff person working for us essentially, however that relationship works. That would work for me, but.
Yeah, well, and that's really what it is. I mean, in terms of a template, it gives you a template, and then exactly as you said, it gives you the opportunity to tweak it so that it becomes a Maine and Ashland policy handbook. But at least it gives you that basis to go from.
So we'll have that ongoing discussion.
I hate to ask this, but do they have marketing literature on why we should do it? I mean, can they send us something? Do we actually?
I'll
wanna
ask.
Visit from our buddy,
Which buddy would that be?
Glenn or?
Mike.
Glenn or Mike?
right?
So that's what I'm saying. It could be Glenn, Mike, Jim, or Pat. I can see any one of those, because certainly Pat Carrera's got a lot to do with policy. So I can see it being any one of those 4.
Cable show on the state of the buildings, something we talked about at one point.
That was around the facility concerns, right? We were talking about touring the buildings.
Going through the buildings.
It was a sort of a community information piece. I don't know whether they're still doing that.
We've got Mr. Grubb coming back in December or January.
Talk about the
Update
NELMS
us on the NELMS
update.
report. spring discussion of school start times. We talked about the presentation on the educator evaluation
Is that,
to present to the
is that
community.
community piece that we've been talking about?
No, I believe what that was is what I was going to do last time. And, right,
okay.
just going through it and saying, this is looking through the superintendent's lens, but this is really the lens that will be used throughout. So I was just going to quickly update you on where we're at with the educator evaluation piece and through the superintendent's lens.
So where are we, did we put a special meeting on our, my brain is a little fried after this week, but
Yes, we
where,
did.
we have a special meeting? Okay, that's, we'd already scheduled it.
Yeah,
That's
we'd
what
already
I thought so, okay, thank you.
Okay, evaluation model for superintendent. We have that on for tonight, but we talked about that that's ongoing, and we did the workshop.
That's right, and
Yeah.
that will be, and there's more work yet to do on that
Yes.
piece, and you're absolutely right with that.
Yeah, okay. Special education audit with action plan. When
We've done
We've
that.
done that.
That was with Kathy, right?
Yeah, with Ms. Silva. Middle school math program update, including the MCAS scores, so, Dr. Stickney, you're thinking December for that?
Is that,
We could do that.
Did you have another
Or did you?
preference?
Well, I think
I'm
the
thinking
MCAS scores are different.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Dr. Stickney. What we were looking at is the principals had asked if they could present, they would like to come and present to you separately with just talking about MCAS and where they're at within their own buildings.
Okay.
So I think that's almost a completely separate item.
Okay.
And they are looking at probably next meeting or 1st of November. Actually, I think it was November, now that I'm thinking
So
that.
are you saying the middle school math program is separate?
it's a
You
separate
would,
item.
you would come and talk about that?
Yes, that's completely
Separate.
different from the MCAS piece.
Okay, so that
not-
was just
not
sort of
including.
attached on the end there.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are two different things, and is December a good time for that? Dr. Stickney, the math update?
That would be fine,
Okay.
whenever you'd like.
Okay. Update on the state's new accountability system? That also has you?
We could actually tie that in with MCAS if you like.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be timely to tie it together.
Revisit joining the tech collaborative? I don't know who, doesn't say who was responsible.
Actually, I think that would,
Question we had, yeah.
I was going to say, I believe that Assistant Superintendent Durand is going to work on that with our Special Education Director, Kathy Silva. So that they, I think are going to bring that. I don't know that it necessarily needs to be in the fall. It could be in the spring. It could be a January meeting, quite frankly.
Okay, and then next we have ASHPAC goals and review.
Is Ashpac gonna come in and make a presentation?
It says fall 2012.
Yes, I believe.
Well, two members were here last time, right, but they didn't, were they just here?
They
for
were here
They
to
were
for
just
the presentation.
Watching
to
Mrs.
watch the
Silva, I
special ed
believe,
audit
yes.
report, but-
I believe that the intent is that they come again with this piece. That's my understanding.
Yeah, they weren't able to do it for that meeting. They
That's
weren't able to
correct.
Find someone, so they're gonna be invited in to.
So we can maybe look at them perhaps in November. Would that work?
Works for me.
November, yep.
Put it on for November. Buildings and grounds rentals for 2011, 2012. It
We
says
move that to
October 20.
December?
December, sure. Okay. Okay, naming of school facilities, we took care of that this evening.
We did a first.
Well, we
read.
did a first read, yeah, so put it on
So
for the
second read
next
is-
second read on the October 25th agenda. And then last is, it was what we mentioned earlier, the community forum on
Oh,
educator
right.
evaluation.
But that will come later.
Well, I don't think we've really
Or-
developed
Yeah,
that
I don't
plan
think that that's,
as
we're
of
quite
yet.
ready to go forward with that. But I'm just thinking, the PBIS, I almost see that as a community forum as well, and I'm just wondering
Could
if
they
we
be
should be listing
combined,
that.
do you think?
No, I
No?
don't think so. I
No.
think you're looking at two very completely different topics and probably targeting very different audiences.
Okay.
With that, and I think that it'd be a full evening just with the PBIS. Incidentally, the tie-in, I don't know whether you're aware of that or not. The scavenger hunt, all of those things are all part of the PBIS program. But I thought it was kind of like saying something inappropriate, and I didn't want to do that, but while they were here, they're so excited.
Exactly.
Said they're delicious. No,
Right.
So
Don't tell them
but
there's sweet
how-
potatoes in the meatloaf.
Isn't it just wonderful to hear that excitement, though?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
You could
what-
see it in their
They
faces.
just, oh, my gosh, they were wonderful tonight.
Yeah, it's just they want those opportunities to
So
connect.
when might you do the PBIS?
We're
Would you
looking,
do that
right now, we're
before?
potentially aiming for January. I don't know whether we'll be able to have it pulled together, but I think we probably can for January.
And then
Can I
the-
make a suggestion?
Mhm.
No, I was gonna say, well, when would you do the educator evaluation forum? That committee- like,
Well, I
are you
think we
seeing
want to give enough time so that you have your audience
You
there,
think
so you may
PBIS
want to.
first?
I would do the PBIS first, and I'll
And then
tell
wait
you,
a little
one of the, or some of the thinking, I think, behind even in our presentation the other day with the SAC group is that the parents really wanted it because they were able to tie in some of what we were saying with, we can do this at home. We can take some of the same stuff that you're doing right now. And so they were really wanting to put a push on it right away to get it out there so that parents could see what we are doing. And then almost have tricks in the back of their bags for parenting skills that they can go forward and use. So I think that I'd really like to see that done as soon as we can, and I think that we feel the earliest we can have it pulled together will be January. Whereas the educator evaluation is really, that's really dissemination, just strictly dissemination of information, because there's nothing that the community can do on that.
Right.
It's
It has
new
to
regs, it's new, it just has to happen. So all we're going to do really, from my perspective, although I don't know if you have a different idea, is disseminate the information to our community so that everybody knows what it's about. So I think you can have that at any time. I mean, that could go forward in March, for example, for that piece, whereas I think the PBIS, I think we'd like to do that a little bit sooner.
Okay.
What I was gonna suggest, because when we've had community forums in the past, we love to have attendance, but we don't always have as much as we like. So, one way to think about it, and I'll just throw it out there, is to think about doing it as a cable show with a studio audience sort of thing. And, I mean, it's just a flipping way to think of it. I mean, obviously, it's a forum, we'll invite people to come, but if you think of it, the people who come are your studio audience, and you're really filming something for cable, and then it can be replayed and replayed. Because we have a lot of trouble getting people out. And so, and that also, if you end up doing that, gives you some options for multimedia stuff where you can add some things in where, maybe you do a little bit of filming in a classroom on the PBIS or in the school.
That's
It's just
a
something
really
to
good
think about.
idea. One of the things that came out of the group, now that and I'm saying that's a great idea because I think it's a great idea, but one of the things that came from our group was the idea of going into breakout sessions, school-based breakout sessions after. And so as we were talking through some of the details today, as we're fleshing it out, we thought perhaps what we could do is look at the first 45 minutes as a complete overview and explanation and just some snippets from each school, but then the parents could thereafter go into breakout sessions with whatever specific school it was that they would like to go to. And so, and we talked about the idea that the teams, because there are leadership teams for PBIS in each school, and those leadership teams, in conjunction with the administration, could thereafter deal with breakout groups. And so that's where we were kind of headed with it, but I love your idea. I don't know if we can do a blend.
I'm wondering if the cable idea might be a great avenue for the educator evaluation, because there
That's a
might
great
be
point.
less participation, maybe just some audience questions.
And probably fewer audience members at that one than the
Correct.
PBIS. So that is,
might be
you're
a
absolutely
great
right. The
idea.
educator eval might be a perfect thing to do that with. I love that idea.
Okay, moving on. We're at our last item, school committee member updates. Mr. Jewett.
Well, I think it's been a quiet week other than policy work, so I will reiterate Mr. McGough's comment. We continue to target to open the new complex at the high school for Thanksgiving. Working on a grand opening program. We're going to be inviting community members to participate in that event. Maybe some past football coaches and players, et cetera, but there'll be some news going out shortly on that. Looking at having an MC, maybe chorus through the music. It's going to be a interactive event, so that's coming up. There's been some queries on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn for the community to respond to, provide their own ideas, so all kinds of good stuff coming, so hopefully that's going to be a big game, too, so for our team. So. It's going to be very exciting.
It will be.
Yeah.
Very
Looking forward to that. Me too. Marcia and I went to the School Safety Summit last week.
We did.
At Neshoba Technical
Uh-huh.
High School. That was really good. We saw two speakers, Scott Poland?
Dr. Scott Poland.
And Rachel Hollander.
Yep.
That was very good.
Yeah, you want,
No.
I was just, I wanted to sort of talk about it a little bit because it was school safety, and Dr. Scott Poland, his presentation was called Psychological Safety and Physical Safety, Bridging the Gap, and his whole message was about how, you know, if you're trying to create school safety, you really need to look into the psychological aspects. That's, you know, all the stuff that we hear about in schools. There's a high correlation with kids who have been bullied and kids who have had mental health issues and isolated kids. He talked a lot about that. And in the
And he also said a piece about the bullying. The anti-bullying legislation has been passed, but almost that goes along with it, though, is the suicidal piece. He's saying that's really important to get that suicidal legislation, too.
He did, that's right.
Yeah, those are correlated.
He
A lot of
talked
times a
about-
bully is suicidal.
That's
Or a
right.
kid who is bullied is suicidal.
A lot of those school shooters, the stories, he's like he was there for Columbine, he was
Yeah.
there for
He's been called
Jonesboro.
all
He's
over
been,
the country to
he's
all
like the
these
go-to guy for
disasters.
these horrible things.
Yeah.
Good
He was-
attendance,
he
too,
was
at the summit.
great.
Very
The
good
summit
attendance.
was very well attended, yeah. We were there with other members of the administration, and our police force were there. It was
Yeah.
really great. But, yeah, he talked about the idea that a lot of these shooters in schools are kids, they're kids who would, you know, are having suicide issues. So, you know, that part was good. What I really liked, though, in the afternoon, it was all about creating school culture, and I had just the quote. She said, culture eats strategy for lunch. And what she meant by that is, you know, you can put all of these different kind of stuff in place, but if you don't have a school culture, doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. And I thought, what a great way of thinking about it. Just don't bother if you haven't. And then she talked a lot about how you create culture and how you identify
Yeah,
culture.
that was very good.
She had the red and yellow and green
Yes.
cards. And we had our staff, we were peeking around, and they were adorable, actually, because I think they thought we were checking.
We wanted
but
to see what the staff
we're just curious, like what, you know, so anyway, and the other piece, and this is where I just want to tie it right back into learning, is she talked a lot about the idea of how the anxious mind can't process information,
That's right.
and she talked about needing to be in a state of relaxed alertness so that your brain can learn. So if you have these kids who are, you know, and it could be as a result of culture and all these other things, if they are not feeling in a good place, they're not taking in the information, we're not teaching them. So it all kind of tied in, the safety and the culture and all of that. It's not just about, you know, fuzzy good feelings for kids, it's about helping them learn. So to me, it was a great day, very well spent. I was very happy to see the staff that we had there, and I know that some of them spoke to me later and said, I went right back to school and started in, which is how exciting, right?
Yeah.
So that was great.
They were both, excellent presentations.
I don't have anything. Next.
No, I've said mine, too, so I have nothing else to add tonight.
Anybody
fine.
else?
Thank you.
Okay.
We'd like to invite you to the ribbon cutting ceremony tomorrow here at the middle school at 11 a.m. I'm looking forward to the STEM lab. Yes, it's next to the cafeteria, hosted by AEFI,
That's a good question.
Great, 11 a.m.?
11 a.m.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I'd just like
Okay.
to add one thing. I'd like to congratulate the assistant or the vice chair on running this meeting smoothly and getting us out right on time. Very good job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your participation, everybody.
Oh, wait.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I am very sorry to break protocol. I usually request to get on the agenda in advance, and I went out literally to get a gallon of milk, and then I realized the calendar had gotten away from me. So I just have a brief statement and a request. I am Rosemary Fedorchak. I am an Ashland resident since 1989 and the mother of two who are currently in grades 8 and 11. A personal word of gratitude to everyone in this room for all that you do for this town and the school system. And also very heartfelt wishes to Kathy Bach and her family at this difficult time. I am here on behalf of the Ashland Emergency Fund to gain this committee's approval to run for the 4th year in a row the Children's Halloween Food Campaign. This is a program that is very simple. It requires minimal involvement by the schools. All the Ashland Emergency Fund volunteers take on all of the operational responsibilities. It's very simple. It's targeted to children in grades K through 5. They are invited to participate, and participation is voluntary. Donation cans are provided the week before Halloween. Kids trick or treat for donations to the emergency fund. Donation cans are collected the week after Halloween. All the money raised would be spent on food for the Ashland Food Pantry. Children in grades K through 5 are given an opportunity to make a difference in their community. And this program is fostering the kinds of values that this committee was talking about earlier, the things that make this town great. The program complements other food raisers, like Scouting for Food, Selectmen's food drives, and the many other efforts, all of which are greatly needed and appreciated. But it's when after the giving season has ended and the shelves start to empty, that's when this money is used to then fill the shelves again. Because obviously food is not just an annual giving season thing, it's needed year-round. This town definitely does take care of their own. I've been very pleased to be part of this program, and I respectfully request this committee's approval to run the program again this year.
Have you done it in the past? 'Cause it's
Absolutely.
been going on, right?
Yes. Rosemary, let me say thank you so much for all that you do and all the people that you help through the emergency fund and all the folks on there. And you have run this in the past, and you've always come to us, and I think it's a great program, and I'm totally in favor of it.
Same.
So
Thank
I'd
you.
make a motion that we approve this.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. That's
Okay,
it.
motion
Wonderful.
approved.
Thank you all very much
Hey,
for.
thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rosemary.
Gotta get that milk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
get that
Lord.
home. Sorry you had to sit through. Same to you. Okay, do we have a motion to
So
adjourn?
moved to adjourn.
Nice second.
Sure can. All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. Meeting adjourned. Good night. Have a good one. Thank God I've got Marcia's.